long before the great deluge swept across the world, long before Abraham rose to become father of many nations, long before Moses stood on the mountain to receive those commandments, there existed a man called Enoch who maintained such close fellowship with God that the unthinkable occurred. He disappeared from the earth entirely, carried into the heavens while still breathing, still alive. Yet Enoch's journey doesn't conclude at that point. Records from antiquity disclose that while dwelling in those celestial domains, he observed secrets of the cosmos, witnessed hierarchies of angels, and received prophetic revelations that would influence humanity's comprehension of the spiritual realm for thousands of years to follow. Right now, we're exploring in depth the full story and enduring impact of this mysterious figure who connected the earthly and the eternal. Between him and the first created man, 7 generations stand: Adam, Seth, Enosh, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, and then comes Enoch. Through those ancient writings, the number 7 beats steadily like a pulse. 7 days when creation unfolded, 7 hues within the covenant's rainbow, 70 times 7 when it comes to forgiveness. And right here, 7 descending steps down the family tree from that garden itself. His father Jared welcomes him into an existence still fresh with recollection. The old ones share accounts of conversing with Adam directly, the one who strolled through the garden during the evening cool alongside the Creator. These aren't legends filtered through countless retellings over ages. These are memories from grandfathers, still fresh, still clear. The identity they assign him holds significance that will require an entire lifetime to fully grasp. Enoch, spoken in that ancient language as Chanok. This word carries meanings like dedicated, initiated, trained. Certain scholars point toward root meanings suggesting narrow or to commence. His identity functions as both noun and verb, essence and motion, melted together into 2 syllables that sound like a doorway swinging open. Yet no parent chooses a child's name with prophecy as the intention. Jared and the child's mother simply call their infant son what feels appropriate, never realizing the cosmic irony they've stumbled upon. This child will be set apart. This child will undergo initiation. This child will commence something unseen since those garden gates swung shut. The reality Enoch awakens to bears no resemblance to our own. Humans live for hundreds of years, their physical forms resisting the deterioration ours experience. Memory stretches across eras. A young person can learn directly from someone who personally knew someone who walked with Adam. That chain remains brief, unbroken. Those genealogical records aren't tedious catalogues. They're lifelines of testimony. Each recorded name represents someone who witnessed everything preceding them. When Genesis records those generations, it's constructing evidence, connecting links, demonstrating that what follows isn't mythology smoothed over by passing time, but rather eyewitness testimony transferred hand to hand. Enoch enters as number 7 in this witness chain. Within Hebrew understanding, 7 embodies completion, wholeness, the divine design threaded through creation's very fabric. That 7th day held sacred status. That 7th year delivered rest. This 7th generation delivers something altogether different. Various traditions suggest his arrival occurred in creation's 622nd year. The world remains young, yet already grows complex. Urban centers emerge. Innovations develop. That knowledge which once appeared boundless in Eden now splinters, becomes specialized, gets hoarded. Humanity divides into separate trajectories, and not every path leads toward illumination. His identity resonates in the mouth during pronunciation. Chanoch, that initial sound, guttural, ancient, demanding breath drawn from deep within the chest. Speak it slowly, carefully. Notice how the sound compels engagement of your entire being. In that ancient world, names weren't mere labels but invocations. Breath given shape as identity. The written record offers no physical details about him. We receive no information about height or build, strength or slightness. Those biblical authors show no concern for such particulars. Their interest lies in what he transformed into, not his outward appearance. Still, we can picture a young boy maturing beneath genealogy's long shadow, conscious that 7 generations' worth of weight rests on shoulders, still learning to bear existence itself. Those early years pass without documentation. His childhood, his training, his companionships, all remain unknown. The text maintains silence regarding whether he displayed scholarly aptitude or wildness, contemplation or activity. We don't discover whether he mastered the trades his community valued or struggled finding where he belonged. What we do understand is this: he arrived during a moment of cosmic tension. The world was expanding. 2 distinct humanities were emerging side by side, and the gap dividing them kept widening. That choice his forebears confronted, whether to invoke the Lord's name or construct kingdoms through their own efforts, was shifting from theoretical to urgent. Enoch would have absorbed the stories. How Cain traveled east after his brother's lifeblood cried out from the soil. How Cain's descendants constructed that first city, naming it for his son Enoch, yes, that identical name, adding further mystery to the puzzle. How Lamech, descending from Cain, married 2 women and composed a violent song that made the community elders respond with troubled head-shaking. However, Enoch descends from Seth's line, the line replacing Abel. The line still remembering those old ways when humanity and divinity weren't separated by such immense distance. His ancestry represents the branch clinging to something the world rapidly forgets. According to ancient rabbis, 7 righteous individuals existed before the deluge, their presence alone restraining judgment. Enoch numbered among them. From his very birth, his identity was being inscribed into a narrative exceeding any individual existence. Initially, he was merely a boy in that ancient territory, born to parents who gave him an identity meaning dedicated. The irony required time to manifest. That prophecy embedded within 2 syllables required 65 years to activate. Yet the name existed, waiting, Chanoch, initiated, the one, destined to begin. 7th from Adam. The 7th seal, the 7th trumpet. The 7th generation. Everything in Scripture arriving in 7s indicates completion. That instant when time intersects eternity and reality shifts. Enoch embodied that shift, approaching him in the form of an infant who didn't yet comprehend that his name functioned as a doorway. The world receiving him at birth, the violence seeps into the earth gradually, like water slowly filling a ship's hull. Enoch matures in a world still adjusting to its brokenness. That garden stands closed. The cherubim stand guard at the eastern entrance with a blade of fire rotating in every direction. Yet the memory of what vanished remains acute, transmitted through voices that still tremble when speaking of it. Adam survives until Enoch reaches 308 years old. Pause and absorb that reality. The original man, the one who walked alongside God during the cool evening hours, remains alive, continues sharing accounts, continues bearing the burden of what transpired beneath that tree. Those generations following the fall scatter across the ancient territories, and as they scatter, they divide. Not merely physically, but spiritually, philosophically. 2 competing visions for humanity's future surface, and they prove irreconcilable. Cain's descendants travel east, distancing themselves from Eden's shadow. They transform into builders, innovators. Jabal fathers those dwelling in tents, keeping livestock. Jubal becomes father to all who perform on lyre and pipe. Tubal-Cain forges implements for cutting, fashioned from bronze and iron. The innovations defining civilization emerge from this exiled lineage. Something remarkable characterizes Cain's descendants. They don't remain seated in ashes, mourning what vanished. They construct, they generate, they advance into the unknown and mold it with their hands. That first urban center rises from their ambition. Music and metallurgy emerge as refined arts. They refuse allowing their father's curse to establish their boundaries. Yet something darker flourishes alongside these accomplishments. Lamech, 7 generations from Adam through Cain's branch, takes 2 wives as partners. He composes a song that freezes the blood. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for injuring me. If Cain receives vengeance 7-fold, then Lamech claims 77-fold. The arithmetic of revenge multiplies exponentially. Violence transforms into poetry. The powerful celebrate their power without shame. Might creates right, and right generates might, and the cycle accelerates faster. Meanwhile, Seth's descendants choose a different trajectory. After Abel's blood cries from the earth and Cain wanders eastward, Adam and Eve have another son, Seth, whose identity means appointed or placed. God has appointed another seed, the text explains, to replace the one Cain eliminated. From Seth comes Enoch, and something transforms. The text indicates that during Enoch's time, people commenced calling upon the Lord's name. This wasn't the initial prayer. Adam surely prayed, but something formal surfaces here, something communal. The practice of worship becomes a distinguishing characteristic of Seth's descendants. They become identified as the sons of God, not because divinity flows in them, but because they've elected to remain in relationship with the divine. They're the ones who remember, who preserve, who refuse permitting Eden's memory to fade into comfortable forgetfulness. Enoch matures among these people. He absorbs the old accounts not from dusty scrolls, but from living witnesses. That memory chain proves shockingly brief. Adam knew God directly. Enoch's great-great-great-great-grandfather Seth knew Adam. The span from paradise to present gets measured in lifetimes you can count on 2 hands. However, the world continues changing. Those 2 humanities, Cain's and Seth's, the builders and the rememberers, coexist side by side, and the tension between them shapes everything. Commerce occurs. Concepts flow. Innovations developed in Cain's urban centers drift westward. Music and metalwork aren't inherently corrupted, yet they arrive packaged with the worldview that birthed them. The Sethites confront a choice every generation. Do we adopt these innovations? Do we engage with the culture Cain's descendants are constructing? Can we utilize their implements without accepting their philosophy? Can we inhabit the world without becoming part of it? Some answer yes. They relocate closer to those cities. They admire the architecture, the artistic expression, the sophistication. They begin viewing their own communities as backward, primitive, trapped in nostalgia for a garden they never experienced. Progress beckons. The future gets constructed with bronze and iron, not prayers and genealogical records. Others resist. They perceive the violence lurking beneath civilization's polish. They hear Lamech's song and recognize it as humanity's destiny if this trajectory continues. They comprehend that the technologies remain neutral, yet the hearts wielding them are not. They select separation, simplicity, the ancient ways. Enoch reaches adulthood within this tension. The surrounding world simultaneously advances and decays. The cities grow increasingly impressive and increasingly corrupt. Knowledge expands and wisdom contracts. Humanity achieves new peaks and new depths simultaneously. The ancient writings hint at something additional occurring as well. Boundaries that shouldn't be crossed are being crossed. The sons of God begin noticing the daughters of men. Were informed they observed that these women possessed beauty, and they took wives for themselves from all they selected. The mixing of those two humanities accelerates. Later, traditions describe something darker, transpiring. Beings that shouldn't possess physical form were assuming it. Angels were abandoning their proper station, drawn by forbidden desires toward humanity's daughters. The Watchers, they would be called. Those who should have remained at their heavenly posts, but descended instead to Mount Hermon, and swore an oath collectively. Whether you interpret this as metaphor or reality, the outcome remains identical. Something that should have remained separate merges. The boundary dissolves, and what surfaces from this fusion is neither fully one thing nor the other, but something monstrous. The text employs a Hebrew word, Nephilim, the fallen ones. Giants stride across the earth, and their presence warps reality around them. Violence isn't merely increasing, it's becoming superhuman, mythological, the kind that distorts civilization's very fabric. By the time Enoch reaches young adulthood, the world fills with this strange combination, advanced innovations in the grasp of those possessing no wisdom for guidance, superhuman capacities married to human pride, beauty and horror intertwined so thoroughly they become indistinguishable. The earth appears beautiful and terrible, precisely as fallen things always do, and into this world of tension between two humanities, of boundaries being violated, of violence multiplying exponentially. A boy named Dedicated matures into a man who must choose which path to walk. Methuselah's arrival. Enoch has lived 65 years when his son arrives. In our timeline, 65 signals retirement, grandchildren, the gradual descent toward life's end. In Enoch's reality, 65 barely marks Middle Age's beginning. People survive for centuries. Adam lived 930 years. Enoch's father, Jared, will achieve 962. Time functions differently when centuries extend ahead like an open highway. For 65 years, Enoch has maintained an ordinary existence. We know almost nothing about these decades. The text skips across them with a single phrase. He fathered sons and daughters. He dwelled in those ancient territories. He breathed and consumed food and slept, and presumably worked at whatever trade sustained his household. Unremarkable. Faithful, perhaps, but not yet notable. Another son in Seth's line, preserving the memory, calling on the Lord's name like his fathers before him. Good, decent, forgettable. Then Methuselah arrives. The identity itself proves cryptic, debated, loaded with possibilities. Some scholars interpret it as man of the dart or man of the javelin. Others perceive when he dies, it shall arrive, or his death shall bring it. The linguistic roots tangle together, resisting easy translation. Yet the rabbis who counted letters and measured meanings noticed something extraordinary. They calculated Methuselah's lifespan, 969 years, the longest documented human life, and mapped it against biblical chronology. When Methuselah dies, the flood arrives. His identity becomes a prophecy. His life becomes a countdown. Whether Enoch grasps this at the birth, we cannot determine. Yet something transforms. The text proves precise about the timing. Enoch walked with God after he fathered Methuselah. That word after carries significance. Before this instant, no such description exists. After this instant, everything transforms. Fatherhood cracks something open within Enoch, holding this child. This fragile new existence in a world growing darker each decade, he experiences the weight differently. The violence isn't abstract anymore. The Nephilim aren't distant threats. This represents the world his son will inherit, and suddenly that matters in ways nothing else has mattered previously. We tend romanticizing spiritual awakening as lightning from the heavens, voices from burning bushes, angels materializing in blinding radiance. But sometimes the wake-up call arrives more quietly. Sometimes it's an infant crying at 3 in the morning, and the realization that you're responsible for a soul, not merely a body. Enoch observes Methuselah and perceives vulnerability, perceives how easily this small life could be crushed by the violence spreading across the earth, perceives how the world's trajectory bends toward judgment, and his son stands directly in its path. Terror accomplishes something that comfort never could. It drives him to his knees. The text indicates he walked with God. The Hebrew verb is hithalech, continuous, ongoing. Not a singular event, but a sustained pattern. Before Methuselah, Enoch may have prayed, may have offered sacrifices, may have called on the Lord's name like his ancestors, but now he walks with God. And the difference encompasses everything. Walking with God transcends walking before God. It implies companionship, conversation, the kind of relationship where silence feels comfortable and words flow easily. Adam walked in the garden during the cool of the day. Now Enoch walks in a fallen world beneath the same kind of presence. He becomes what the world desperately requires, someone who maintains intimacy with the divine while inhabiting chaos's middle. Not a hermit in a cave, not a monk in isolation. A father, a husband, a man with obligations to meet and children to raise and neighbors to navigate. The walking continues for 300 years. 3 centuries of faithfulness. 300 years of rising each morning and selecting the same thing, communion over convenience, presence over pragmatism, that long obedience in the same direction. We don't understand what this looked like practically. Did he pray at designated times? Did he retreat to certain locations? Did angels materialize regularly? Or was it mostly the quiet sense of companionship, the awareness that he wasn't alone even when physically alone? The text shows no concern for those particulars. It cares about the pattern. After Methuselah, Enoch walked with God. The catalyst was fatherhood. The outcome was intimacy. The duration was 300 years. Methuselah matures in a household saturated with this presence. His father is the man who walks with God, not metaphorically, not occasionally, every day, every year, every decade. It becomes normal the way a child maturing beside the ocean stops registering the sound of waves. Enoch has additional children during these centuries. Sons and daughters, the text indicates. Though their identities are lost, the household expands. Existence continues. Crops require planting. Tools require repair. Disputes require resolution. The mundane rhythms of existence don't pause because you're walking with God. This proves crucial. Enoch doesn't abandon the world for mystical experiences. He doesn't neglect his family for spiritual pursuits. The walking with God occurs alongside changing diapers and settling arguments and teaching his children the skills they'll require for survival. The mystical and the mundane fuse together. Heaven and earth occupy identical space. The sacred bleeds into the ordinary until they're indistinguishable, until every instant becomes an opportunity for communion, until walking to the well and walking with God are the same thing. Methuselah's birth is the hinge. Everything prior is prologue. Everything following is the story that will echo across millennia. One instant, one child, one father, suddenly aware that the stakes rise higher than he'd imagined. The text provides us the mathematics. 65 years before Methuselah, 300 years following. Yet behind the mathematics stands a man making a choice every morning for 3 centuries. The choice to walk. The choice to not walk away. The choice to believe that intimacy with the divine remains possible even here, even now, even in this world that seems to be tearing itself apart. Methuselah, whose identity might mean when he dies it shall arrive, lives longer than any human ever documented. 969 years. as if God is granting humanity every possible opportunity, extending the grace, postponing the judgment, waiting to observe if someone else will make Enoch's choice. Yet the countdown has commenced. The clock starts ticking at Methuselah's birth. The world has 969 years remaining. Enoch doesn't know this yet. Or perhaps he does. Perhaps that's why he starts walking. Perhaps he hears in his son's first cry the sound of a world running out of time. Either way, after this instant, nothing remains the same. Enoch walks with God, and God walks with Enoch, and somehow, impossibly, both are transformed by the journey. The meaning of walking with God. The phrase surfaces twice in all of Genesis. Enoch walked with God. Noah walked with God. That's it. Two men in Scripture's entire opening book receive this description. Not Abraham, who departed everything to follow a promise. Not Moses, who spoke face to face with the Lord. Not David, the man after God's own heart. Just Enoch and Noah. Just these two in a world before the deluge, before the covenants, before the law. The Hebrew idiom is et Elohim. The verb form is reflexive, intensive, sustained. Walking, but walking that continues, that doesn't stop, that transforms into a life's defining characteristic. And the preposition is et, with. Not before or after or toward, but with. This matters more than we typically notice. Walking before God suggests observation, accountability, the awareness of being watched. Walking after God implies following, obedience, staying on the path someone else has cleared. Walking toward God speaks of pursuit, longing, the gap requiring closure. Yet walking with God, that's something else entirely. That's companionship, partnership, the kind of intimacy where two beings move through the world together, their steps synchronized, their destinations aligned. It's the garden relationship somehow restored amid a fallen world. The ancient rabbis perceived layers in the phrase. Some stated it meant Enoch lived righteously in covenant fellowship. Others suggested it indicated prophetic experience, receiving divine revelation. Still others interpreted it as walking in God's ways, following the path of justice and mercy. All true, probably, but also insufficient, because the text could have stated any of those things more directly. It could have stated Enoch was righteous. It could have stated God spoke to Enoch. It could have stated Enoch followed the Lord's commands. Instead, it states he walked with God. And the simplicity of the phrase opens up rather than closes down, meaning walking is ordinary. Walking is what you do daily. Walking is how you travel from here to there. Yet when you walk with someone, the journey transforms. Suddenly the destination matters less than the company. There's a rabbinic tradition stating that Enoch's walking led him step by step into the heavenly realms. Each day he traveled a little farther. Each conversation opened a little deeper. Each shared silence taught him a little more. The walking was literal and metaphorical simultaneously. Physical steps mirroring spiritual ascent. We might imagine it differently. Enoch in his workshop, hammer in hand, aware of a presence beside him that offers wisdom about angles and wood grain. Enoch at the market negotiating for grain, sensing guidance about fairness and generosity. Enoch with his children at night telling stories, and the stories carrying a weight beyond his own memory. The walking is integrated, seamless, not separated into sacred and secular compartments. The person who walks with God in the morning doesn't stop walking when afternoon arrives and work demands attention. The presence continues. The companionship endures. Early Christian writers perceived in Enoch's walk a foreshadowing of incarnation, God walking with humanity, Emmanuel, God with us. The promise that one day the distance between heaven and earth would collapse entirely. Enoch was practicing something that wouldn't be fully revealed until Bethlehem. Yet here's what walking requires: movement. You can't walk while standing still. You can't walk while clinging to the familiar. Walking means leaving what was behind and moving toward what will be. It means trust that the next step will hold your weight. It means vulnerability to the journey. Enoch walks with God through a world that's becoming increasingly hostile to that kind of intimacy. The cultures surrounding him celebrate power, innovation, independence, self-made men constructing self-made cities, worshipping self-made gods, the concept that a person would subordinate their will to walk beside an invisible deity seems weak, backward, superstitious. Yet Enoch continues, day after day, year after year, decade after decade, century after century. The walking becomes muscle memory. His body learns the rhythm. His soul aligns with the presence. The initial effort gives way to flow. The conscious choice becoming unconscious habit, becoming inherent nature. 300 years is a long time to maintain anything. Marriages fail in far less. Careers pivot. Passions fade. The person who commits to a path at 25 finds themselves on a different road entirely by 40. Yet Enoch, from age 65 to age 365, walks without wavering. Some suggest the walking led to transformation, that Enoch's body began to change, his flesh taking on qualities that would make the final translation possible. Walking with God rewrote his DNA, prepared his cells for the moment when earth could no longer hold him. Others emphasize the moral dimension. Walking with God meant walking away from the corruption flooding the earth. Every step toward holiness was a step away from the Nephilim, the violence, the breakdown of boundaries. Enoch's path diverged from humanity's trajectory so drastically that he ended up on an entirely different plane. Both interpretations carry truth, yet maybe the core meaning is simpler. To walk with God means to prefer the company, to choose companionship over loneliness, partnership over independence, shared journey over solo expedition. To say morning after morning, I'm not doing this alone. The world tells us that maturity means standing on our own feet, needing no one, sufficient in ourselves. Enoch's walk suggests the opposite. True maturity recognizes that we were never meant to walk alone. The garden had two walking in the cool of the day. The new creation will have a city where God dwells with humanity. The in-between time requires those who refuse to accept the separation as final. Enoch walks with God, and in doing so he becomes a bridge between past and future, between Eden and eternity, between what was lost and what will be restored. His walking is protest and promise at once. Protest against the concept that intimacy with the divine is impossible. Promise that one day, for all who select it, the walking will lead home. The phrase is simple. Enoch walked with God. Yet simple doesn't mean shallow. Sometimes the deepest truths hide in the plainest words, waiting for those willing to slow down and notice. Walk long enough beside someone, and you become like them. Spend enough time in their presence, and you start to see the world through their eyes. Journey together for 3 centuries, and something happens that transcends explanation. Enoch walked with God, and somehow the walking changed everything. 3 centuries of faithfulness, 300 years. Let the number sit there. Let it become real. In 300 years, civilizations rise and fall. Languages evolve beyond recognition. Innovations leap forward in ways that make the past seem prehistoric. The world of 1725 and the world of 2025 share almost nothing in common except the sun rising in the east. Yet Enoch walks with God for 3 centuries without breaking stride. From age 65 to age 365, the pattern holds. The companionship continues. The intimacy deepens. The man who started this journey with a newborn son maintains it long after that son has children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren spiraling out into their own stories. This is the part we skip over too quickly. We prefer the dramatic moments. The beginning, the end, the translation into heaven. Yet, the middle. The long middle where nothing seems to happen except more of the same. That's where the real story lives. Day follows day follows day. Seasons cycle. Crops get planted and harvested and planted again. Enoch ages, though aging means something different in a world where centuries are normal. His hair grays. His joints ache in the morning. His children mature and leave home. His responsibilities shift from raising young ones to counseling grandchildren to becoming the patriarch everyone else looks to for wisdom. Through all of it, he walks with God. Not spectacularly, not with miracles on every corner, just faithfully, persistently, with the kind of stubbornness that looks like gentleness because it never announces itself but simply refuses to quit. The text informs us he had other sons and daughters. Methuselah isn't an only child. The household expands. More mouths to feed, more personalities to navigate, more conflicts to mediate. Anyone who's raised multiple children knows that each one requires different wisdom, different approaches, different levels of patience. Enoch does this for centuries. He's there for Methuselah's childhood, adolescence, young adulthood, middle age. He watches his son become a father at 187, bringing Lamech into the world. He sees generations proliferate, his DNA spreading through the population like ripples from a stone dropped in still water. And all the while, the world darkens, the violence increases, the Nephilim multiply, the corruption that will eventually demand a flood grows more entrenched, more systemic, more normal. What once shocked people becomes accepted. What once seemed extreme becomes ordinary. The slide into chaos accelerates. Enoch walks through this, not isolated from it, not protected in some bubble of piety. He lives in the world, deals with the world, sees what the world is becoming. The walking with God doesn't remove him from reality. It gives him a different perspective on reality, a vantage point that allows him to see clearly without being overwhelmed. There must have been moments when it seemed pointless, when walking with God while everyone else ran toward destruction felt like futility, when being faithful in a faithless generation looked like cosmic waste. Why maintain intimacy with the divine when the world around you is choosing violence? Why hold on to something ancient when everyone else is building something new? Yet Enoch continues, and this is where the real heroism lives. Not in the moments of high drama, but in the decision to get up tomorrow and do the same thing you did today, even when there's no evidence it matters. The long obedience in the same direction doesn't make good cinema, it makes good character. Some traditions suggest that Enoch's walking led him regularly into visionary experiences, that the 300 years included multiple journeys into heavenly realms, conversations with angels, revelations about the structure of reality. These visions get recorded later in the book of Enoch, though dating those texts is its own scholarly nightmare. Whether the visions came regularly or rarely, the pattern persisted. Whatever supernatural experiences occurred, they didn't replace the daily choice to walk. Mystical heights didn't excuse him from mundane valleys. The extraordinary and ordinary coexisted in a life that refused to separate them. We should note what the text doesn't say. It doesn't say Enoch became famous. Doesn't say he gathered followers or started a movement. Doesn't say he built an organization, or wrote prolifically, or became a public figure. For 300 years, he walks with God and the world barely notices. This might be the most important detail. Enoch's faithfulness is almost invisible to his contemporaries. The impact won't be measured until much later, when Hebrews recalls him as a hero of faith, when Jude quotes his prophecy, when Ethiopian Christians preserve his visions as scripture. In his own time, he's just a man who walks with God, while everyone else is busy with more important things. The discipline required for 3 centuries of consistency staggers the imagination. We struggle to maintain habits for 3 months. We celebrate anyone who can sustain a practice for 3 years. 3 decades seems like sainthood. 3 centuries seems like science fiction. Yet the secret might be precisely this. Enoch isn't trying to maintain a habit. He's maintaining a relationship. And relationships, when they're genuine, don't require the same kind of white-knuckle discipline that habits do. You don't grit your teeth to spend time with someone you love. You don't force yourself to walk with a companion whose presence brings joy. The walking becomes its own reward. The communion becomes the point, not a means to some other end. Enoch walks with God because walking with God is what he wants to do. The pleasure and the purpose merge until they're indistinguishable. Still, 300 years test everything. Test patience when progress seems slow. Test faith when judgment seems delayed. Test hope when the world's trajectory points so clearly toward destruction. Test love when fewer and fewer seem worth loving. Test the very foundations of belief when all evidence suggests that belief is foolishness. Enoch passes these tests not through superhuman strength, but through daily surrender. Morning after morning, he makes the same choice. Evening after evening, he reflects on the same presence. Year after year, decade after decade, century after century, the pattern holds because the relationship holds. By the time he reaches 365 years old, he's been walking with God for 300 years. He's outlived most of his contemporaries from youth. He's watched the world change in ways that would have seemed impossible when he started. Innovations have advanced. Cultures have shifted. The violence has grown more sophisticated and more brutal simultaneously. Yet Enoch walks with God, and after 300 years, God has a proposal, a next step, a journey that will require leaving even this long obedience behind for something that transcends human categories entirely. The faithful 300 years make possible what comes next. The translation doesn't happen to someone who's been walking for 3 weeks. It happens to someone who's been walking for 3 centuries, who's proved that intimacy with God isn't a temporary enthusiasm but a permanent orientation, who's demonstrated that the relationship can survive time's test, that companionship with the divine is sustainable for the long haul. 300 years of faithfulness. No shortcuts, no skip chapters, just one foot in front of the other, day after day, with a presence that never wavers and a choice that never changes. This is how you prepare for heaven. Not through dramatic spiritual experiences, though those may come, but through the daily decision to walk with God, even when nothing else walks, even when the world runs in the opposite direction, even when 3 centuries stretch behind you and the path ahead remains unclear. Enoch walks, and in the walking, he becomes someone capable of taking the next step, walking right out of this world and into another. The emergence of a prophetic voice. Something shifts in those long centuries of walking. Enoch begins to speak. We know this from an unexpected source, not from Genesis, which remains sparse with details, but from the New Testament letter of Jude, written thousands of years later, quoting a prophecy that survived through oral tradition, texts, lost texts, or divine preservation. Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment on all and to convict all the ungodly of all their deeds of ungodliness that they have committed in such an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things that ungodly sinners have spoken against him. This is Enoch speaking. The man who walks with God for 300 years finally opens his mouth, and what comes out is fire. The prophecy is remarkable for several reasons. First, its preservation. How did Jude know these words? How did they survive the flood, the scattering, the millennia between Enoch's time and the 1st century? Something about this utterance carried such weight that it couldn't be forgotten, couldn't be erased, couldn't be diluted by time. Second, its content. Enoch isn't predicting next week's weather or the outcome of local disputes. He's seeing across the entire arc of history to the ultimate judgment, the final settling of accounts, the moment when the holy ones return with the Lord to execute justice. This is eschatology before the word existed. The end times proclaimed at the beginning of time. Third, its repetition. The prophecy uses forms of ungodly 4 times in one sentence. This isn't casual speech. This is prophetic poetry, the kind where rhythm and repetition drive the point deeper than logic alone could reach. Ungodly deeds, ungodly way, ungodly sinners. The word hammers like a judge's gavel. Enoch is speaking to his own generation, but through them to all generations. He's seen what's happening, the violence, the corruption, the boundary violations, the casual cruelty that's becoming systematic brutality. The world is breaking in ways that demand divine response. Yet more than that, Enoch is speaking from his own experience of walking with God. You don't maintain intimacy with holiness for 3 centuries without developing a sensitivity to unholiness. The closer you get to the light, the more clearly you see the darkness. The longer you walk in purity, the more unbearable impurity becomes. This is the prophetic burden. See clearly, speak truly. Accept that your words will be ignored by most, treasured by few, vindicated only when it's too late for those who should have listened. The judgment Enoch prophesies is both cosmic and personal. The Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones. This isn't a solo return. Heaven mobilizes. The angels who remained faithful while the watchers fell will accompany the Lord. The righteous who've gone before will return. The final reckoning involves the whole company of heaven descending to set right what's gone wrong, to execute judgment, to convict, to bring the evidence, present the case, deliver the verdict. Legal language saturates the prophecy. This isn't arbitrary divine rage. This is justice methodically applied. Every deed examined, every word weighed, every choice evaluated against the standard of righteousness that the world has been violating with increasing abandon. Enoch sees this, whether in vision, or through revelation, or simply through the logical extension of what God's character requires. He understands where the current trajectory leads. You can't multiply violence forever. You can't corrupt the earth endlessly. You can't violate divine boundaries without consequence. Eventually, the bill comes due. The harsh things ungodly sinners have spoken against him. This line suggests that Enoch heard these things, that in his own time people were already speaking against the Lord, mocking, dismissing, actively opposing. The atheism of action, if not always of explicit belief. Lives lived as if God either doesn't exist or doesn't matter. Enoch walks with God while others walk away from God. He sees the divergence. He understands that these 2 paths can't ultimately coexist. One must win. One must end. And the prophecy declares which will triumph. Yet here's what makes the prophecy truly remarkable. It's hope. Yes, judgment comes. Yes, the ungodly will be convicted. Yet the Lord comes with his holy ones. The righteous aren't destroyed. They return. They participate. They're part of the solution, not just victims of the problem. Enoch himself will become proof of this. The man who walks with God doesn't face the flood. He's taken up before the judgment falls. His translation becomes the promise that those who maintain faithfulness won't be swept away with those who choose corruption. God makes distinctions. God rescues his own. The prophetic voice emerges not despite the 300 years of walking, but because of them. You can't speak for God without first listening to God. You can't convey divine perspective without being shaped by divine companionship. Enoch's words carry authority precisely because they come from someone who's been walking in step with the divine long, enough to know the divine mind. We should note that this makes Enoch the first explicitly recorded prophet. Others before him surely spoke words from God. Adam received instructions in Eden. Yet Enoch is the first to deliver a prophecy about future divine action that gets preserved and quoted. The prophetic tradition begins here, with a man who walked with God and then spoke what he heard. His message isn't gentle. The repetition of ungodly isn't accidental politeness. Enoch has seen enough. The long patience that allowed him to walk faithfully for centuries while evil multiplied hasn't blunted his moral clarity. If anything, it's sharpened it. He knows what holiness requires. He knows what justice demands. He knows the current situation is unsustainable. Therefore, he speaks, and his speaking ripples across millennia. Jewish traditions will preserve his words in the book of Enoch, elaborating the visions, expanding the prophecies. Christian writers will quote him as authoritative. Ethiopian churches will include his book in their biblical canon. The voice that emerged in the antediluvian world will never quite fall silent. Yet, in his own time, how was the prophecy received? Did people listen? Did they change? Did anyone besides Enoch's immediate family take his words seriously? The text suggests not. The violence continues. The corruption spreads. The world moves steadily toward the judgment Enoch predicted. His prophetic voice, clear and urgent, seems to echo unheeded through a civilization too busy with its own pursuits to notice the approaching storm. This is the prophetic pattern that will repeat throughout Scripture. Speak truth, be ignored, watch the consequences unfold exactly as predicted, wonder why anyone bothered giving the warning if nobody was going to heed it. Then realize that the warning was never just for those who would listen. It was for the record, for history, for those who would come later and need to know that God spoke even when God's people wouldn't listen. Enoch walks with God and speaks for God. Both actions flow from the same source, intimacy sustained over centuries. Both actions define him, the man who wouldn't stop walking, wouldn't stop speaking, wouldn't compromise the truth even when the truth was unwelcome. The prophetic voice emerges, and with it, a message that will outlive the civilization. It warns. Judgment comes. The Lord returns. The ungodly will be convicted. The holy ones will accompany him. And those who walk with God need not fear the day when walking ends and standing before the throne begins. The Watchers and the Fallen. The book of Enoch tells a story that Genesis mentions only in passing. The sons of God see the daughters of men. They take them as wives. The Nephilim walk the earth. The narrative is cryptic, compressed, as if the biblical writer is uncomfortable with details that might overwhelm the reader. Yet Enoch received the full story, or so the traditions claim. He became the messenger between two worlds, carrying judgment to those who had abandoned their proper place. The Watchers were angels assigned to watch over humanity. The name suggests their function: observation, guardianship. The heavenly beings who keep vigil while the earth turns. 200 of them descended on Mount Hermon according to the expanded accounts, and swore an oath together. They saw the beauty of human women and desired what they should not desire, touched what they should not touch, crossed a boundary written into the structure of reality itself. Their leader was Semjaza. Others included Azazel, who taught humanity the art of war, how to make swords and shields, breastplates, and the weapons of violence. Amazarach taught sorcery and the cutting of roots. Barakel taught astrology. Kokabiel taught the signs. Each fallen angel brought forbidden knowledge, technologies and techniques that humanity wasn't ready to handle. The result was chaos compounded. The Watchers' unions with human women produced hybrid offspring, the Nephilim, giants whose appetites exceeded human scale. They consumed the resources meant for normal people. They taught violence and oppression. They became the strongmen, the tyrants, the semi-divine kings who ruled through force and fear. Yet more than physical corruption, the Watchers brought knowledge corruption. They revealed secrets that should have remained hidden. They taught humanity to manipulate reality through magical arts. They showed how to read the future in the stars, how to coerce spirits, how to bend natural law, power without wisdom, technology without ethics, knowledge divorced from the covenant relationship that should have governed its use. Enoch walks into this situation. The man who walks with God is sent to those who walked away from God. The irony is deliberate, the contrast complete. Enoch maintained intimacy. The watchers abandoned their post. Enoch stayed faithful. They became faithless. Enoch chose the narrow path. They chose the broad road and dragged humanity with them. According to the book of Enoch, the watchers ask him to intercede on their behalf. They realize too late that judgment is coming. They see what they've unleashed and want to take it back. They ask Enoch, the one who still walks with God, to plead their case, to request forgiveness, to see if there's any way back from what they've done. Enoch brings their petition to heaven. He's shown visions of what's coming, the flood that will destroy the hybrid offspring, the chains that will bind the fallen angels, the eternal imprisonment that awaits those who violated their nature. The answer is absolute. There is no forgiveness for this. There is no way back. The boundary they crossed cannot be recrossed. The knowledge they revealed cannot be concealed. The corruption they introduced cannot be extracted. Therefore judgment, therefore imprisonment, therefore the flood that will wash clean the earth of what should never have been, the Nephilim, will drown. The watchers will be bound. Humanity will get a fresh start, though the memory of what happened will persist, a cautionary tale told around fires for generations. Enoch delivers this message. He stands before beings vastly more powerful than himself. Angels who once stood in God's presence, who knew heavenly secrets, who possessed knowledge and power beyond human comprehension. And he tells them, "You're finished. No appeals, no second chances, no mercy for this." The courage required is staggering. These aren't theoretical evil entities. They're present, powerful, desperate. They could destroy Enoch if they chose. Yet, something protects him. The same presence he's been walking with for centuries stands between him and the fallen angels. They can hear his message, but cannot harm the messenger. The expanded texts describe Enoch's journeys through the places of punishment. He's shown the chambers where the fallen angels will be imprisoned, the darkness that will hold them until final judgment, the eternal fire that awaits them. He sees the places prepared for the righteous and the wicked among humanity, the dwelling places of the dead separated by a great chasm. This is information that shouldn't be available to humans. Enoch is being shown backstage, behind the curtain, into the cosmic machinery that operates the universe. He learns things that won't be common knowledge for millennia. The structure of heaven and hell, the ranks of angels, the laws governing spiritual reality, the timetable of judgment. Why Enoch? Why this particular man for this particular task? Perhaps precisely because he walked with God for so long without wavering. Perhaps because he proved trustworthy with smaller revelations before being given larger ones. Perhaps because God needed someone who could carry the weight of these visions without breaking, who could see the darkness without being consumed by it, who could deliver messages of judgment without losing hope. The story of the Watchers and the fallen angels haunts Jewish and Christian imagination for centuries after Enoch. The Dead Sea sect clearly valued these texts highly. Early Christians referenced them. Church fathers quoted them. The question of how to interpret the sons of God in Genesis 6 produced endless debate, and Enoch's expanded account provided one possible answer. Whether you read this as literal history or theological metaphor, the point remains sharp. Boundaries exist. Violating them has consequences. Knowledge without proper relationship to God becomes destructive rather than constructive. Power divorced from covenant responsibility leads to oppression. Angels who abandon their assignment become demons. Humanity that accepts forbidden knowledge suffers for it. Enoch stands in the middle of this disaster as the one uncorrupted voice. He didn't take forbidden knowledge from fallen angels. He received legitimate revelation from the God he walked with. He didn't cross boundaries. He was invited through doors that opened specifically for him. He didn't violate his nature. He fulfilled it, becoming more fully human through intimacy with the divine, rather than less human through forbidden hybridization. The Watchers and the Fallen represent one path. Grab what you want. Cross any boundaries that seem necessary. Gather power and understanding without concern for the proper sequence. Enoch shows us a different way. Wait until you're invited. Walk alongside others in fellowship. Accept what is offered, instead of grabbing what is forbidden. Have faith that closeness will open doors to everything you truly require. Two paths, two outcomes. The Watchers conclude in bondage. Enoch concludes in being taken up. The decision between these paths shapes not only these beings, but every generation that comes after. Will we force ourselves into understanding before we're prepared? Or will we walk in faithfulness until understanding comes to us? Will we break boundaries for short-term gain, or will we preserve our integrity for purposes that last forever? Enoch brings the message to the fallen angels, and they offer no reply. What could they possibly say? They made their choice. They took action. They pulled consequences down on themselves and on the entire world. Now they must face what follows. Judgment approaches. The flood will wash things clean. The angels will be imprisoned. And one day, when everything reaches its end, the final reckoning will take place. But Enoch, the one who delivers judgment's message to the rebellious, himself remains covered by grace. He walks in companionship with God, and one day, in the near future, that walking will carry him past where angels tumbled down, past where humans have struggled, into the presence he's been practicing for 300 years. Enoch's journeys into heaven commence. The veil rips open. Enoch stands between two worlds. For 3 centuries he walked alongside God on the earth. Now the companionship expands further. The divine presence he's experienced through prayer and daily fellowship takes on new forms. Angels make their appearance. Not the fallen watchers, but the faithful messengers. The ones who stayed at their posts while others came down. They have an assignment. Show Enoch how reality is structured. Teach him the mysteries concealed from ordinary human perception. Get him ready for the translation that approaches. The Book of Enoch lays out these journeys in intricate detail, whether they happened one after another or came as visions, whether they are literal accounts or symbolic representations. The texts show Enoch as a guided visitor through territories most humans never catch a glimpse of. He becomes the cosmic traveler, charting regions of heaven and earth that exist outside normal awareness. First journey, the storehouse of the winds. Enoch gets taken to witness where the winds originate from, how they're controlled, how they're released at the right times. 4 principal winds, each with its chamber, each with its role. The north wind, cold and preserving. The east wind, bringing rain and growth. The south wind, hot and drying. The west wind, temperate and bringing balance. Beneath the seeming randomness of weather exists divine structure, intentional design, deliberate management. This might appear ordinary. Why does Enoch need understanding about wind management? But the meaning goes deeper. The universe isn't disorder. What appears random is actually regulated. What we observe actually has intention behind it. Enoch discovers that every natural occurrence has a position, a purpose, a proper role. Nothing comes from accident. Second journey, the luminaries, sun, moon, stars. Enoch gets shown the routes they travel, the principles governing their movements, the exactness with which they mark the passage of time. He discovers that the year contains 364 days, perfectly divisible by 7 and 52. He observes the gates through which the sun comes up and goes down at different times of year, 6 in the east and 6 in the west. He grasps how the moon grows full and diminishes according to established patterns. This isn't merely astronomy. This is theology, written into celestial mechanics. The lights above aren't God's deserving worship as neighboring cultures think. They're servants, obeying commands, marking times and seasons for humanity's advantage. They point to the Creator's order, his mathematical exactness, his dedication to dependable patterns. Third journey, the tree of life and the tree of wisdom. Enoch gets taken to the garden that still exists, guarded by the cherubim with the flaming sword. He observes the trees that brought about humanity's removal. The tree of life continues to stand, waiting. One day, its fruit will become available once more to those who are righteous. The tree of knowledge of good and evil remains as evidence of the choice Adam made. Enoch sees paradise maintained, not erased, kept in safekeeping for the restoration that's approaching. Fourth journey, the ends of the earth. Enoch travels to the limits of the world. He observes the pillars upon which the heavens rest, the foundations upon which the earth stands. This represents ancient cosmology, the picture of reality that his culture grasps. But whether the specifics are scientifically precise matters less than what they signify. The universe possesses limits, boundaries, organization. Creation isn't without end. It has borders, locations where earth touches heaven, where time meets eternity. Fifth journey, the places of the luminaries during summer and winter. Enoch watches how the sun's route shifts, how the moon's cycle continues repeating, how the stars hold to their courses. He's being instructed to notice patterns, to recognize that what occurs in the heavens mirrors what should occur on earth. Order, consistency, faithfulness. The celestial bodies don't resist their assignment. They trace their paths with complete consistency. Heaven offers the pattern for how earth should operate. Sixth journey, the mountains of the north and south. Enoch gets shown the geographic extremes, the wild territories humans seldom visit. Even in those places, he discovers divine order. The mountains stand where they've been positioned. The valleys rest where they've been designated. Geography itself points to intentional design, to a creator who formed the world with purpose. Seventh journey, the chamber of the dead. This is where the expanded narratives become particularly vivid. Enoch observes the place where spirits remain until judgment, divided into compartments. The righteous in one section, experiencing peace and expectation. The wicked in another, already beginning their punishment, conscious of what's approaching. Between them, a massive chasm that cannot be crossed. The afterlife is nothingness. Awareness persists. Justice remains ahead. The dead are divided according to their earthly lives. Throughout these journeys, angels function as guides. Uriel reveals to him the astronomical secrets. Raphael clarifies the geography. Gabriel discloses the judgment still to arrive. Michael, the great prince, stands as guardian. Each angel possesses their territory, their knowledge, their responsibility. Enoch learns from every one of them, gathering knowledge that humanity won't rediscover for thousands of years. But the journeys aren't only educational. They're transformative. Each vision alters Enoch. Each revelation reshapes his comprehension. The man who started walking with God at age 65 is becoming someone able to exist in territories beyond the physical. His body is being readied. His spirit is being stretched. His awareness is being raised to handle realities that would crush ordinary humans. The texts describe Enoch's fear at different points. He shakes before angelic glory. He pulls back from visions of judgment. He grieves at the destiny of the wicked. These aren't comfortable revelations. He's being shown things that weigh heavily rather than bring delight. truths that carry heaviness rather than lightness. Yet he doesn't turn back, doesn't ask to return to simpler existence, doesn't request to forget what he's learned. The walking with God that started on earth extends into heaven. The companionship that began in ordinary life reaches into extraordinary vision. The relationship stays constant even as the setting changes. We should observe what these journeys reveal about divine teaching methods. God instructs Enoch systematically. Winds before luminaries. Luminaries before geographic extremes. Geographic extremes before the places of judgment. Each lesson builds upon previous ones. Each vision readies him for the next. The curriculum has intention, order, design to bring Enoch from where he stands to where he needs to arrive. This matters because it indicates that the walking with God isn't only about relationship for relationship's sake. It's about preparation, development, expanding into a capacity to handle realities beyond current understanding. Enoch is being prepared for something specific. The 300 years of faithful walking were necessary. The journeys through heavenly territories are necessary. All of it points toward a moment that's drawing near. The heavenly journeys commence, and with them, Enoch's understanding expands dramatically. He observes the structure of reality from God's viewpoint. He discovers the laws governing physical and spiritual realms. He grasps how time and eternity interact. He recognizes patterns invisible to those who walk only on earth without companionship with heaven. And all of it, every journey, every vision, every teaching, is readying him for what comes next. The house of crystal. The throne of glory. The moment when he'll stand before the divine presence in ways even these extraordinary visions haven't fully prepared him for. The journeys have commenced. The veil has ripped open. Enoch stands between worlds and discovers that both are more real than he imagined, more terrible and more beautiful, more ordered and more wild, more precisely designed and more freely expressive than any human philosophy has captured. He walks with God through territories no human has charted, and the walking continues onward. The house of crystal and the tongue of fire. Enoch draws near to the ultimate threshold. The journeys through storehouses and chambers, through winds and stars, through geographic extremes and places of the dead, all of it was introduction to this. The angels escort him to a house constructed of crystal. The text struggles with metaphor here, reaching for language to describe something beyond ordinary matter. Crystal suggests transparency, purity, hardness, clarity. The house isn't constructed from crystal. It is crystal, substance and structure inseparable, light passing through it without blockage. Inside this crystal house stands another house. This one is constructed of tongues of fire. Not fire that destroys, fire that reveals, fire that purifies, fire that marks the presence of holiness so intense that ordinary matter cannot draw near without burning. The flames form walls, ceiling, floor. They move constantly, yet hold perfect structure. They're simultaneously wild and completely controlled. This is the throne room, the place where heaven's government operates. The location from which all decisions flow, all judgments proceed, all commands originate. Enoch, the man who walked with God on dusty paths through a fallen world, now stands at the administrative center of the universe. The floor is fire. The ceiling is the path of stars. Flaming cherubim surround the throne. The text keeps layering images because no single metaphor is enough. Fire and crystal, light and darkness, glory and terror, beauty and danger. Everything here operates at intensities human nervous systems weren't designed to process. Then Enoch observes the throne itself, great beyond measuring, high beyond calculating, more brilliant than the sun, yet not painful to observe. The contradictions multiply because language breaks down. How do you describe what transcends description? How do you capture in words what exists beyond words? On the throne sits the great glory. The text never quite says God directly, as if the name is too sacred even for this moment. The figure wears a garment brighter than the sun. Beneath the garment, nothing human eyes can perceive. The face radiates glory that makes angels cover their eyes. The presence fills the house of fire without being contained by it. Around the throne stand countless angels, thousands upon thousands, 10,000s upon 10,000s. They don't sit, they don't rest. They stand in constant attention, ready to carry out whatever command issues from the throne. These are the ones who remained faithful while the watchers fell. These are the ones who kept their posts, maintained their assignments, refused the temptation to descend and corrupt. Enoch falls on his face. The appropriate response to this level of glory is prostration. Not worship directed at Enoch. He's not receiving worship, but worship offered to the one on the throne. For 300 years, Enoch has walked with God. Now he stands, or rather falls, before God in manifestation beyond anything his centuries of companionship prepared him for. A voice addresses him. The sound comes from everywhere and nowhere. It's inside his mind and outside in the air at the same time. The voice is both gentle and terrifying, both welcoming and overwhelming. The one who walked with Enoch on earth now speaks to Enoch from the throne of heaven. The message is simple. Enoch is righteous. Enoch is a scribe of righteousness. Enoch will testify to the coming judgment. The validation comes from the highest possible source. Everything Enoch has done, everything he has chosen, everything he has maintained through 3 centuries, it's recognized, approved, confirmed by the only opinion that ultimately matters. But there's more. Enoch gets shown what's coming, the flood that will destroy the world, the preservation of Noah and his family, the new beginning after the judgment. The entire arc of history unfolds before him like a scroll being unrolled. He sees past the immediate crisis to distant futures, to moments when his own testimony will be needed, when his prophecies will be remembered, when his translation will serve as proof that intimacy with God is possible and transformation is real. The angels who stand around the throne speak. They're not silent observers, but active participants in heaven's government. They intercede for humanity. They report on earthly events. They receive assignments and depart to carry them out. Heaven isn't static. It's dynamic, engaged, constantly interacting with earth, even when earth doesn't notice. Enoch observes the books. Vast records of every deed done on earth, nothing forgotten, nothing overlooked, everything recorded with perfect accuracy. The books will be opened on Judgment Day. The evidence will be presented. The cases will be decided. What seems to escape justice in the moment is actually being carefully documented for the day when accounts are settled. The vision of the throne room changes Enoch in ways that go beyond knowledge. Being this close to holiness, at this intensity, does something to a person's substance. His body, if it's still his body, is being transformed. His capacity to exist in this environment suggests that he's no longer quite human in the ordinary sense. Or perhaps he's becoming more human, more what humanity was always meant to be before the fall reduced us to our current limited state. The Book of Enoch describes this moment in layers of metaphor: crystal and fire, light and darkness, glory and terror. But beneath the metaphor lies an experience that transcends description. Enoch stands before the throne of the universe and understands, perhaps for the first time fully, who it is he's been walking with all these years. The God who walked with him in the garden of his daily life, the God who accompanied him through raising children and growing old and watching the world darken. The God who seems sometimes close and sometimes distant, but never absent. This is that same God, now revealed in glory, that makes suns look dim. The continuity is crucial. The God of the throne room is the God of the walking path. The presence that felt intimate in daily companionship is the same presence that sits in cosmic authority. Enoch's 300 years of relationship haven't been with a diminished deity, a scaled-down version suitable for human consumption. He's been walking with the one who commands angels, who governs the universe, who holds all authority. The relationship was always this significant. The power was always this great. The glory was always this overwhelming. Enoch is just seeing it more clearly now. This is comfort and terror intertwined. Comfort because the one on the throne knows him, has walked with him, has validated him. Terror because this level of holiness exposes every imperfection, every compromise, every moment of faithlessness in stark relief. Yet Enoch remains. He's not consumed. He's not destroyed. The holiness that should annihilate him instead transforms him. The angels continue their songs. The fire continues its dance. The crystal continues its transparency. And Enoch, mortal man from a failing world, stands in the throne room of eternity and is not destroyed. 300 years of walking with God has prepared him for this moment. The companionship has built a bridge that allows him to exist where he should not be able to exist, to see what humans should not be able to see, to survive what should overwhelm any created being. The house of crystal and the tongue of fire, the place where earth and heaven, time and eternity, human and divine intersect. Enoch stands at that intersection and discovers that the walking with God was always leading here. Every step on dusty paths was a step toward this throne. Every morning's choice to continue in companionship was building capacity for this encounter. He observes the great glory on the throne, and the great glory sees him. And somehow, impossibly, both recognize each other. The relationship forged over 3 centuries holds even here, even at the cosmic center, even in glory that should obliterate all merely human connections. Enoch stands before the throne, and the standing changes everything. The secrets of the astronomical book. The angel Uriel takes Enoch aside. Among all the angels who guide him through heavenly mysteries, Uriel specializes in the celestial mechanics, the laws governing sun and moon and stars. His name means, God is my light, and he's been appointed to reveal the order hidden in the lights of heaven. What follows is one of the most detailed astronomical texts from the ancient world. The Book of Enoch dedicates extensive passages to calendar calculations, seasonal variations, solar and lunar movements. Modern readers skip over these sections, bored by what seems like tedious mathematics. But for Enoch's time, this was revolutionary knowledge. Uriel shows him the gates. 6 gates in the east where the sun rises, 6 in the west where it sets. During summer, the sun uses the northernmost gates. During winter, the southernmost. The transitions happen gradually, the sun's path shifting gate by gate through the year. Each gate marks a specific time, a particular season, a designated function. The year, Uriel explains, contains 364 days, not 365 as we measure it, not the 354 days of a lunar calendar, exactly 364 days. This number matters because it's perfectly divisible by 7, 52 weeks of 7 days each, 4 seasons of 13 weeks each, 3 months per season, each containing 30 days plus 1 extra day at the end of the 3rd month. The calendar is solar, not lunar. This distinction becomes crucial. Surrounding cultures base their calendars on the moon's cycle, which creates a 354-day year that drifts against the solar seasons. They add extra months periodically to keep alignment. But Uriel's calendar follows the sun, maintaining perfect synchronization with the agricultural seasons without requiring adjustment. The moon receives different treatment. Uriel shows Enoch how the moon waxes and wanes in a cycle that doesn't align perfectly with the solar year. The moon has its own path, its own laws, its own purpose. Its light is borrowed from the sun, not original. It serves to mark times and seasons, but it shouldn't govern the calendar. The sun, created on the fourth day to rule the day, provides the proper measure for human time. Why does this matter? Because calendar is theology. How you measure time reveals what you believe about divine order. A lunar calendar suggests that the heavens are somewhat chaotic, requiring constant human adjustment to keep alignment. A solar calendar of 364 days suggests that the Creator built mathematical precision into creation, that the same God who commands angels also commands celestial mechanics with exact order. The Dead Sea sect, centuries later, will adopt this 364-day calendar. They'll separate themselves from the Jerusalem temple partly because the temple follows a lunar calendar they consider corrupt. The Book of Enoch's astronomical sections will be copied carefully at Qumran, treated as authoritative, used to structure their entire community life around what they believe is the true divine time. But Enoch is receiving this knowledge in real time from an angel who oversees celestial mechanics. Uriel explains how stars are organized, how constellations follow appointed paths, how nothing in the heavens moves randomly. Every light has its course, every luminary has its law. Every celestial body fulfills its assignment. The wind patterns correlate with astronomical seasons. When the sun passes through certain gates, specific winds blow. The north wind accompanies winter. The south wind accompanies summer. The east and west winds mark transitional seasons. Wind and sun work together, coordinated by the same divine wisdom that established both. Uriel shows Enoch the future movements of celestial bodies, not just the current year, but cycles that repeat across decades. The sun's path through its 12-year cycle, the moon's complex patterns of waxing and waning, the stars' slow procession through the heavens. Time is not linear, but cyclical, returning to the same points repeatedly while also moving forward toward appointed ends. This knowledge serves multiple purposes. First, it allows accurate prediction of seasons, crucial for agricultural societies that depend on knowing when to plant and harvest. Second, it reveals divine order, showing that the apparently complex movements of heavenly lights follow mathematical laws. Third, it separates Enoch's people from surrounding cultures that worship celestial bodies as gods. You don't worship what you understand as servant, not master. But there's something deeper happening. Enoch is being taught to see the invisible structure underlying visible phenomena. The sun rises and sets, obvious to everyone. But why does it rise where it does? What determines its path? What governs its seasonal variation? Behind the observable lie laws. Behind the laws lies a lawgiver. Behind the lawgiver lies love, because order exists for creation's benefit, not for arbitrary divine pleasure. Uriel explains the relationship between sun and moon. The sun provides light independently. The moon reflects it. Therefore, the sun is greater, ruling the day, while the moon rules the night with borrowed authority. This isn't just astronomy. It's hierarchy. Some things are sources, others are reflections. Knowing which is which prevents confusion about where power originates. The text notes that all this knowledge is preserved for the righteous. Not everyone receives these mysteries. Not everyone needs to understand celestial mechanics at this depth. But those who walk with God, who maintain faithfulness across centuries, who prove trustworthy with smaller revelations, they receive larger ones. Enoch's 300 years of walking earned him access to information others never glimpse. Modern readers might puzzle at why an ancient astronomical text appears in a religious work. But for Enoch's world, astronomy and theology aren't separate disciplines. Understanding how God ordered the heavens helps you understand how God orders everything. The precision visible in celestial mechanics suggests equal precision in moral law, in spiritual reality, in the structure of justice. If God counts and orders the stars, how much more does he count and order human actions? Uriel concludes his teaching with a warning. Some will ignore these laws. Some will follow lunar calendars that drift. Some will worship the heavenly lights instead of the one who commands them. Their confusion about celestial matters will mirror confusion about spiritual matters. Those who can't tell time correctly won't tell truth correctly either. The secrets of the astronomical book transform how Enoch sees the night sky. What seemed random now reveals order. What appeared chaotic now shows pattern. What looked like divine mystery now displays divine mathematics. The stars don't whisper fate, they shout faithfulness. Sun and moon don't control human destiny. They mark divine time, counting down to appointed moments when heaven intersects earth, when promises mature, when judgments fall, when new ages begin. Enoch learns to read the heavens. And in reading them, he learns to read the one who wrote them, the place of the righteous and the wicked. Enoch stands at the edge of something no living human has witnessed. The angel guides him downward through layers of creation most mortals never imagine exist. They descend past the realm of clouds, past the foundations of mountains, into the hidden chambers beneath the visible world. Here the dead wait. 4 hollow places stretch before him. Vast caverns carved into the bedrock of existence. Each compartment glows with different light. One radiates soft warmth. Another pulses with cold absence. The third flickers with restless energy. The fourth sits in absolute darkness. The angel speaks. These are the holding places for souls departed from flesh, not the final destination. The waiting room before judgment. In the first chamber, Enoch observes the righteous dead. Those who walked faithfully during their days under the sun, they rest in peace, their spirits bright and coherent. A fountain springs up in their midst, providing water that never runs dry. Light bathes them constantly. They feel no pain, no confusion, no regret. They know what comes next for them. Therefore they wait with patience. The second chamber holds a different kind of soul. The wicked who died without repentance, their spirits twist and writhe, though they possess no bodies to twist. They cry out, though they have no mouths. The darkness here isn't merely absence of light. The darkness actively presses in, suffocating, crushing. They too know what comes next. Therefore, they wait in terror. The third chamber contains those who died violently. Their lives cut short by murder or injustice. Their spirits rage against the walls of their confinement. They call out for vindication, for their blood to be avenged. The angel tells Enoch, "These souls will testify on Judgment Day. Their testimony will condemn those who spilled their blood. Until that day, they wait in righteous anger." The fourth chamber disturbs Enoch most. Here rest those who achieved wealth and honor during life through oppression and cruelty. They lived in luxury, while others starved. They built their houses with stones of injustice. Now they lie in a chamber that mirrors their hearts, empty, cold, devoid of even the companionship of fellow sufferers. Complete isolation. Eternal loneliness. The angel explains the divine logic. Each soul goes to the place that matches what they chose during life. The righteous chose communion with God, so they rest in light and fellowship. The wicked chose separation, so they experience that separation fully. The murdered cry for justice because justice was denied them. The oppressors sit alone because they treated others as objects, not persons. The afterlife begins as an echo of choices made in the flesh. But this isn't the end. The angel makes that clear. These chambers are temporary. A great day approaches when all souls will be gathered, judged according to their deeds, and sent to their eternal dwelling places. The righteous will enter fullness of joy. The wicked will face the second death. Enoch asks about those who seem neither fully righteous nor completely wicked. The angel's answer comes carefully. Every soul that lived made choices. Every choice bent them toward light or darkness. By the end of life, the pattern becomes clear. No one stands truly neutral. The visit changes how Enoch sees his own world. When he returns to walk among the living, he sees them differently. Every person he meets is bending toward one of those chambers. Every action they take moves them incrementally toward light or shadow. The woman selling grain in the marketplace, the child playing by the river, the elders sitting at the city gate, all of them walking a path that leads to one of those four places. This knowledge doesn't make him judgmental. The opposite occurs. Compassion floods through him. These people don't know what waits beneath the world. They live without vision of the consequences stretched out beyond death. They need warning. They need truth. Enoch begins to speak more urgently about the coming judgment, not with anger, but with the desperate love of someone who has seen what others haven't. He describes the chambers. He explains the divine justice that awaits. He pleads with people to choose the path that leads to light. Some listen, most don't. The revelation of the afterlife also changes how Enoch grieves. When righteous friends pass away, he doesn't mourn as those without hope. He knows where they've gone. He's seen the chamber of light, the fountain, the peace. Death for them means stepping from shadow into greater illumination. When the wicked die, his grief runs deeper. He knows what they're experiencing now, and worse, what comes later. The temporary torment will give way to permanent separation. Their choices in life have locked them into an eternal trajectory. The vision of the four chambers becomes one of Enoch's most important messages to later generations. He tells his children. He speaks of it to anyone who will listen. The dead are not gone. They are waiting, conscious, aware, already experiencing the first fruits of their choices. Heaven and hell begin before the final judgment. This truth spreads through the generations that follow. When Noah preaches righteousness to his generation, he echoes Enoch's warnings about the chambers of the dead. When the prophets speak of Sheol, they draw on traditions rooted in Enoch's visions. The idea that souls await judgment in different conditions becomes woven into the spiritual understanding of Enoch's descendants. Centuries later, when the Messiah tells the story of the rich man and Lazarus, one in comfort, one in torment, separated by an uncrossable chasm, he describes something his listeners already knew from ancient tradition. The pattern Enoch saw, the chambers beneath the world testify to a fundamental reality. Actions have consequences that transcend the grave. Justice delayed is not justice denied. Every wrong will be set right. Every good deed remembered. Every soul will stand before the throne and give account. Enoch returns from the vision carrying this weight. The knowledge of what awaits changes everything about how he lives his remaining years on earth. The parables of Enoch. The angel takes Enoch higher. They ascend beyond the storehouses of weather, beyond the paths of stars, beyond the chambers of the dead. They rise until the fabric of normal creation grows thin. Here the angel shows Enoch something that existed before the world began. A figure stands before the throne of glory. The angel calls him the Son of Man, the Chosen One, the Righteous One, the Anointed. All these names belong to him. He possesses a glory that predates creation itself. Before the sun was kindled or the moon set in its course, this figure existed in the presence of the Ancient of Days. Enoch watches as the heavenly court acknowledges this figure. Angels bow, seraphim cover their faces, the very foundations of the throne room tremble with reverence. This is no ordinary angel. This is something else entirely, the angel explains. This one will come to judge the earth. He will separate the righteous from the wicked. He will overthrow the kings who oppress the poor. He will vindicate those who suffered for righteousness. All authority in heaven and earth belongs to him. But first he must remain hidden. The Ancient of Days conceals the Son of Man until the appointed time. The world goes on in ignorance of his existence. Kingdoms rise and fall. Empires expand and crumble. Humans live and die, never knowing that their judge already stands before the throne, waiting for his moment to be revealed. Enoch receives 3 parables concerning this hidden figure. The first parable describes the final judgment. The Son of Man sits on the throne of glory, while all the earth's inhabitants stand before him. The rich and powerful who thought themselves secure discover their wealth means nothing here. The kings who rule through violence and oppression see their kingdoms reduced to dust. The merchants who gained fortunes through dishonest scales find their gold has no weight in this court. Meanwhile, the righteous shine. Those who suffered for doing right receive vindication. Those who gave their bread to the hungry inherit abundance. Those who comforted the grieving receive eternal comfort. The reversal is complete and final. The second parable reveals the dwelling place of the chosen. Enoch observes a land prepared for the righteous, where the tree of life grows and offers its fruit freely. Rivers of living water flow through valleys that never experience drought. The sun neither scorches nor sets. Perfect light, perfect temperature, perfect peace. The wicked, by contrast, are cast into darkness. Not merely the absence of light, but an active, crushing darkness that presses them from all sides. Fire burns there, yet gives no light. Worms feed endlessly, yet the suffering never consumes the sufferer completely. Eternal duration, eternal consciousness, eternal regret. The third parable describes the hidden wisdom of the Son of Man. Before the world was made, the Ancient of Days chose him. Before humans walked the earth, his name was proclaimed in the heavenly courts. The secret plan of redemption existed in the mind of God from eternity. Enoch learns that nothing happening on earth takes the throne by surprise. The rebellion of the watchers, the corruption of humanity, the violence filling the earth, all of this was foreseen. The remedy was prepared before the disease appeared. This revelation shakes Enoch to his core. The Son of Man existed before Adam, before the garden, before the serpent's lie. Redemption was planned before rebellion occurred. Hope was established before hope was needed. The angel shows Enoch how the Son of Man will accomplish his work. He will come to earth, though he belongs to heaven. He will take on flesh, though he exists in spirit. He will walk among humans as one of them, though he remains other. Through his own suffering, he will break the power of suffering. Through his own death, he will conquer death. Enoch struggles to understand how this can be. How can the one who judges the earth submit to earthly powers? How can the one who existed before creation enter creation as a creature? The paradox seems impossible. Yet the angel assures him what seems impossible to humans is the very method God has chosen. The Son of Man will descend to accomplish what ascending alone could never achieve. He will enter the broken world to mend it from the inside. The righteous, who have already died, await his coming. They rest in their chamber of light, knowing that when he appears, their vindication will be complete. The wicked who have died await him with dread, knowing that when he appears, their condemnation will be final. Enoch observes the scope of the plan, not just judgment for individuals, but restoration for all creation. The Son of Man will renew the earth itself. He will cleanse it of corruption. He will establish a kingdom that never ends, a reign of perfect justice and mercy. Mountains will bow before him. Rivers will sing his praise. Trees will clap their hands. The whole created order, groaning under the weight of rebellion, will be set free when he appears. The vision includes a detail that troubles Enoch. He observes that many will reject the Son of Man when he comes. They will prefer darkness to light. They will choose their own autonomy over his righteous rule. Even when he stands before them in flesh, revealing his glory, they will turn away. This rejection was also foreseen, included in the plan. The Son of Man comes not to force allegiance, but to offer it. Those who choose him will be saved. Those who refuse him will face the consequences of their refusal. Enoch asks, who will recognize him when he appears? The angel's answer comes clear. Those who hunger for righteousness will know him. Those who long for justice will see him clearly. Those whose hearts are pure will recognize their king. The proud will miss him entirely. The self-righteous will reject him. The powerful will feel threatened by him. He will be a stone that causes some to stumble and others to stand firm. Before Enoch returns to earth, the angel speaks one final truth about the Son of Man. His name has been revealed in heaven, but not yet on earth. When the appointed time arrives, his name will be proclaimed to all nations. Every tongue will speak it. Every knee will bow at its sound. That name carries power to save and power to judge. The same name that welcomes the repentant will condemn the rebellious. Everything depends on how humans respond when they hear it spoken. Enoch descends from the vision carrying this knowledge. He has seen the Messiah before the Messiah came. He knows the end from the beginning. He understands that history moves toward a moment of revelation when the hidden Son of Man steps from eternity into time. This makes him unique among the prophets. Most see glimpses of the future. Enoch sees the eternal present that underlies all futures. The two visions of history. Enoch receives sight beyond sight. The angel unfolds before him a vision of time itself, compressed into symbols he can grasp. All of human history, from the beginning to the end, laid out like a scroll being unrolled, past, present, future, all simultaneously visible. The first vision comes in the form of a great deluge. Enoch observes water rising from beneath the earth and pouring from above. The fountains of the deep burst open. The windows of heaven split wide. Water covers everything: mountains, valleys, cities, fields. The world he knows drowns beneath an ocean that has no shore. But the vision includes one point of safety. A massive vessel floats on the surface, carrying within it the seed of the new world. Animals enter in pairs. A righteous man and his family find refuge. Everything outside the vessel perishes. Everything inside survives. The angel explains, this flood will come in the days of Enoch's great-grandson. The violence filling the earth has reached its limit. The corruption of the watchers has spread too far. God will cleanse the world through water, preserving only a remnant to start again. Enoch observes his own son in the vision. Methuselah will live until the flood comes. His very life serves as a countdown to judgment. When Methuselah dies, the waters will begin to rise. His name itself carries the prophecy. When he dies, it shall be sent. The knowledge fills Enoch with sorrow and relief at the same time. Sorrow, because the world he knows will end. Relief, because the evil he witnesses daily won't continue forever. Justice will come. Cleansing will arrive. The second vision reaches further, much further. The angel shows Enoch the entire sweep of history from the flood to the end of all things. But the vision comes in code, in symbols that protect the knowledge from casual observers. What Enoch observes appears as animals, not humans. Each species represents a different nation or group. Bulls walk upright, representing the faithful line that begins with Adam. From them come righteous patriarchs who preserve the knowledge of God through the generations. White bulls appear at key moments, fathers of multitudes, bearers of covenant promises. Then sheep emerge, countless sheep spreading across the earth. These represent the descendants of the faithful, the people called to be holy. Among them appear occasional lions, representing kings. Some lions protect the sheep, others devour them. Enoch watches as the sheep suffer under various predators. Birds of prey descend on them, representing conquering empires from distant lands. The sheep are scattered, carried away to foreign territories, forced to serve under harsh masters. Yet, through it all, a remnant survives. Shepherds appear in the vision, tasked with protecting the sheep. But many shepherds prove faithless. They abuse their authority, neglecting the flock, allowing wolves to slaughter at will. The angel records each act of unfaithfulness. Every sheep lost to a negligent shepherd will be accounted for. The vision accelerates through centuries. Kingdoms rise, kingdoms fall. The sheep endure conquest, exile, return, and repeated cycles of rebellion and restoration. Through it all, a faithful remnant persists, smaller than it should be, larger than enemies expect. Then something remarkable appears in the vision. Among the sheep, one is born different. A lamb that becomes something greater. The other sheep don't recognize him at first. Some reject him entirely. But this lamb possesses authority over all creatures. His presence changes everything. After the lamb appears, the vision shifts dramatically. A great battle erupts. All the predators, the birds, the lions, the beasts that have tormented the sheep for generations gather for a final assault. The faithful sheep seem hopelessly outnumbered, but the lamb stands firm. And suddenly the throne itself enters the battle. The Ancient of Days rises. His presence scatters the predators like dust before wind. They are cast into a chasm that opens beneath them. Fire consumes them completely. The remaining sheep, those who align themselves with the Lamb, are transformed. Their nature changes. They become something new. No longer vulnerable prey, they inherit a kingdom that cannot be shaken. The vision concludes with a new heaven and new earth. The old creation, stained by rebellion and blood, passes away. A fresh cosmos emerges, perfect and pure. The throne descends to dwell among the transformed sheep. Death no longer exists. Pain becomes a forgotten memory. Enoch also receives the vision in another form, the apocalypse of weeks. History divided into 10 epochs, each representing a phase of God's dealing with humanity. The first week runs from creation to Enoch himself. The second encompasses the flood and its aftermath. The third includes the calling of the faithful line. The fourth brings the law written on tablets. The fifth sees the temple built. The sixth records the temple destroyed and the people scattered. The seventh week shows rebellion at its peak. The eighth brings chosen ones who receive the sword of judgment to execute justice. The ninth reveals the final judgment written for all the world. The 10th inaugurates eternal righteousness when heaven and earth are remade. Each week contains both destruction and preservation. Each cycle includes judgment and mercy. The pattern repeats until the final week, when repetition ends and eternity begins. What strikes Enoch most about these visions is their inevitability. History doesn't meander randomly. A plan guides it. Events that seem chaotic from ground level follow perfect order when viewed from heaven's perspective. The empires that conquer the faithful, allowed for a time, then judged. The shepherds who fail their flocks, their negligence recorded, their punishment certain. The Lamb who appears among the sheep, his arrival was determined before the foundation of the world. Human free will operates within these visions, but doesn't override divine sovereignty. People choose their allegiances. Nations decide their policies. Rulers make their decrees. All these choices matter. All have consequences. Yet the overall trajectory bends toward the conclusion God ordained from the beginning. Enoch returns from this vision understanding something profound. The violence he observes in his own time isn't the final word. The corruption of the watchers won't stand forever. The flood will cleanse. The faithful line will continue. The Lamb will come. Justice will prevail. This knowledge sustains him through his final years on earth. When he witnesses cruelty, he remembers the vision of final judgment. When he observes the righteous suffer, he recalls the transformation awaiting them. When evil seems triumphant, he knows its days are numbered with precision. He writes these visions down for future generations. Not in plain language, that would be too dangerous, but in symbols and codes that the faithful can decipher. The books he creates will outlast empires. The visions he records will encourage the oppressed across millennia. The moral teachings to his children. Enoch gathers his sons and daughters around him. 300 years of walking with God have taught him what matters, what lasts, what crumbles. He needs to pass this wisdom to the next generation before his time on earth concludes. They assemble in his dwelling place, young and old together. Methuselah sits closest, now nearly 300 years old himself. The other children and grandchildren form circles around them. Everyone senses this moment carries weight. Enoch begins with a blessing for the righteous. Blessed are those who walk in the law of the Most High. They plant themselves like trees beside flowing water. Their leaves don't wither. Their fruit appears in season. Everything they touch prospers, not always immediately, but certainly over time. Blessed are those who speak truth, even when lies would profit them more. Their words become seeds that produce harvests of trust. People learn they can rely on what comes from the mouth of the truthful. Blessed are those who feed the hungry from their own table. They lend to God Himself. What they give in kindness returns to them, multiplied in ways they cannot predict. Blessed are those who comfort those who mourn. They will receive comfort in their own seasons of grief. The mercy they show will be shown to them when they need it most. Blessed are the pure in heart. They will see God, not metaphorically, literally. The clean eye perceives what the clouded eye cannot. Purity opens doors that remain locked to the corrupted. These blessings aren't merely nice sayings. Enoch speaks from direct observation of how heaven operates. He's seen the books where deeds are recorded. He knows what receives reward and what invites judgment. Then his tone shifts. The blessings give way to warnings. Woe to those who build their houses with injustice. Every stone laid through oppression weakens the foundation. Eventually the whole structure collapses inward, crushing those who dwelt within. Woe to those who grow rich by making others poor. They accumulate wealth that burns their hands. What they hoard becomes evidence against them on the day of accounting. Woe to those who pervert justice for bribes. They sell their souls for silver that tarnishes. They trade eternal weight for temporary metal. Woe to those who speak lies and call them truth. Their tongues become serpents in their own mouths. They poison themselves before they poison others. Woe to those who turn away from the poor. They will cry out in their own time of need, and no one will answer. The mercy they withheld will be withheld from them. These warnings come from the same source as the blessings. Enoch has seen the chambers of the dead. He knows where the unjust wait. He understands what comes after death for those who lived without regard for righteousness. His children listen with varying degrees of attention. Some lean forward, absorbing every word. Others shift restlessly, impatient for the teaching to end. Enoch sees both responses. He continues anyway. He teaches them about sexual purity. The watchers fell through lust. They witnessed the daughters of humanity and claimed them violating the established order of creation. This transgression brought forth the Nephilim and defiled the entire earth. Protect your eyes, Enoch cautions. Protect your mind. Protect your marriage bed. Sin of a sexual nature creates waves that reach farther than any other kind of wrongdoing. He instructs them concerning riches. Currency in itself holds no moral value. The obsession with wealth is what corrupts. Grip material things with open hands. Share without hesitation. Keep in mind that all things flow from the hand of the divine. Whatever you hold, you simply manage for a season. He instructs them concerning words. Language shapes existence. The things you declare, you begin to embody. Speaking blessing attracts blessing. Speaking curses attracts curses. Watch over your speech with greater care than you watch over your valuables. He instructs them concerning household relations. Give honor to your mother and father, not due to their perfection, but because failing to honor them creates an opening for disrespecting all forms of authority. Train your sons and daughters in the paths of what is right while they are still young. A sapling bent in one direction becomes difficult to correct once it has grown tall. He instructs them concerning labor. Work using your own 2 hands. Do not look down on dignified effort. The person who will not work should not expect to be fed. Arrogance that turns away from modest employment creates poverty of the inner life as much as the wallet. He instructs them concerning rage. Fury scorches the person who harbors it more severely than the person it targets. Let go of grievances swiftly. Release what offends you before it hardens into resentment. The heart that refuses forgiveness constructs a cell that bolts from within. Throughout these lessons, Enoch interweaves accounts from his personal journey. He shares about the occasion he almost sacrificed truth to gain social favor. He recounts the instance when he selected righteousness instead of riches. He confesses errors he committed in his earlier days before he discovered how to walk alongside the Almighty. The openness catches some of his children off guard. They had assumed their father existed in flawless purity from the moment of his birth. Learning about his challenges gives them encouragement. If Enoch needed to absorb these truths through hardship, then perhaps hope exists for them too. He also reveals what he has discovered about communion with the divine. Do not pile up phrases as though the Almighty requires extensive explanations. Communicate plainly. Communicate truthfully. Present your genuine worries, not the worries you believe you ought to have. The Creator understands your needs ahead of your asking. Prayer transforms the person who prays more than it alters situations. Rest in quietness as much as you voice requests. The divine voice emerges more frequently in silence than in commotion. Make room in your existence for hearing, not merely for speaking. As the instruction period lengthens, Enoch observes his youngest grandchildren becoming weary. He adjusts his method. He starts describing to them the realm yet to arrive. The renewed earth, where what is right makes its dwelling. The city designed and constructed by the Almighty himself. The river of life streaming from the throne. The tree bearing 12 varieties of fruit, a different kind each month. Their eyes grow large. Paradise becomes tangible to them through his depictions, not theoretical, not far away. A location more substantial than the ground they presently tread. One grandchild poses the question they have all been pondering. Will we encounter you there, grandfather? Will you be present in that city? Enoch stops speaking for a moment. He understands what approaches for him next. He understands he will not pass away like other mortals. Yet he also understands he will see them once more in the world that is coming. His reply arrives with deliberation. If you pursue righteousness as I have instructed you, we shall be brought together again. We shall walk side by side in the restored garden. We shall share the feast at the table set for the faithful. The instruction session ends with a closing charge. Keep these teachings in your memory after I have departed. Record them in writing if needed. Deliver them to your sons and daughters. These are not simply my personal views. These are realities I absorbed by walking alongside the Almighty for 300 years. They function because they match how existence truly operates. Living rightly produces life. Living wickedly produces death. This is not random. This is woven into the very structure of creation. His children scatter slowly, hesitant to go. Some perceive they will not receive teachings of this quality again. Their perception proves accurate. The translation arrives. Enoch's 365th year comes. A complete solar cycle measured in years, a full rotation. The number itself holds meaning in its symbolism. As numerous as the days filling a year, his life has returned to its starting point. He awakens that morning sensing something has changed. The barrier between realms grows transparent. Messengers move with greater freedom through his home. The radiance that typically remains concealed begins to appear in visible manifestations. His household detects his distraction. Enoch addresses them, yet his focus keeps drifting upward. He perceives things beyond their perception, hears melodies outside their range of detection. Methuselah inquires whether his father is feeling healthy. Enoch offers reassurance. I feel better than I have ever felt. The burden I have been carrying is being lifted. All through the day, Enoch offers farewells without stating them directly. He wraps his arms around each child, each grandchild. He speaks words of blessing over them. He reminds them one last time of the truths he has imparted. His words possess finality, though he never states outright that he is going. As the evening draws near, Enoch walks to a location he frequently visits for prayer, an elevated place with a view of the valley. His household follows from a distance, perceiving that something significant is unfolding, yet uncertain what it might be. The sun moves toward the edge of the world. Enoch stands with arms lifted, uttering words his household cannot fully distinguish. He converses with someone invisible. His face emits light the way a face does when illuminated by flames, except no flames burn in the vicinity. The atmosphere starts to shimmer. Reality itself appears to ripple like water disturbed by wind. The border between the celestial realm and earth grows permeable. Then they make their appearance. Messengers descending in ordered arrangement, their wings generating wind that flattens the grass. The household pulls back in both terror and wonder. They have heard Enoch describe messengers, but witnessing them proves entirely different. The messengers encircle Enoch not with threat, but with reverence. They have arrived as an escort, not as captors. One among them, the same messenger who has guided Enoch through his celestial journeys, reaches out a hand. Enoch turns to gaze at his household one final time. No trace of fear appears on his face, only joy, only eager anticipation. He is traveling home to the realm he has visited in vision. Now he will stay there without end. He does not experience death. Death possesses no authority over him. Instead, he moves forward into the angelic escort. His physical form does not deteriorate or fail. It undergoes transformation. The flesh becomes something beyond, something capable of existing in celestial domains without decay. The radiance grows in intensity until the household can no longer gaze directly at the scene. They protect their eyes. When they look once more, Enoch has disappeared. The messengers have disappeared. Only the ordinary evening remains. The household searches with urgency. They call out his name. They examine the earth for any indication of where he went. Nothing appears. Enoch walked alongside the Almighty, and then he existed no more, for the Almighty claimed him. The phrase becomes his memorial. Not Enoch died, but Enoch existed no more. He bypassed death in its entirety, transferred from earth to the celestial realm without undergoing the separation of soul from body. Only one other mortal in history will share this unique status. Elijah the prophet, who rises centuries afterward in a chariot made of fire. Two witnesses across the ages that death is not unavoidable. Two testimonies that the divine can preserve the body along with the soul. Enoch's translation accomplishes multiple purposes for his household. It supplies undeniable proof that everything he taught held truth. A man who walks alongside the Almighty for 3 centuries and then gets carried directly to the celestial realm. His words bear divine validation for generations that follow. Enoch becomes a sign, hope for those who question whether faithfulness carries weight, evidence that the divine honors those who honor him, a glimpse of what awaits the righteous. His translation also operates as judgment upon his generation. While the world surrounding him descends into violence and moral decay, the divine removes his faithful witness. The removal signals that time grows short, judgment draws near. The fact that Enoch is transported rather than dying in the natural way also preserves him in a distinctive manner. He enters the celestial realm with complete understanding of what earthly existence involves. When he speaks before the throne concerning human struggles, he speaks from personal experience. He understands the temptations mortals encounter because he encountered them and prevailed. Later, theological contemplation will consider what happened to Enoch's physical form. Did it remain physical, yet glorified? Did it transform into something holy of the Spirit? The text provides no specifics. What carries importance is that Enoch, the complete person, not merely the soul, was carried into the divine presence. This distinguishes him from the patriarchs who arrive after him. Abraham passes away and receives burial. Isaac passes away and receives burial. Jacob passes away and receives burial. Their souls proceed to the chamber of the righteous, awaiting resurrection. Yet their bodies return to dust. Not Enoch. His body never experiences corruption. He leaps directly from mortal existence to immortal being. The translation also confirms his prophecies. Everything he issued warnings about unfolds exactly as predicted. The flood arrives in the generation of Methuselah precisely as Enoch foretold. The judgment upon the watchers takes place. The visions of history develop exactly as revealed. A prophet whose words demonstrate truth and whose life concludes in translation, his testimony becomes unshakable for those who come after. Centuries afterward, people continue speaking about Enoch. They tell accounts of the man who walked alongside the divine. They preserve his writings, copying them with care from generation to generation. They reference his prophecies when they need courage to remain faithful during corrupt times. His translation becomes shorthand for possibility. If Enoch could maintain righteousness in the violent days preceding the flood, then righteousness proves possible in any era. If the divine translated Enoch for his faithfulness, then the divine still rewards faithfulness in the present. The event also establishes a theological category. Before Enoch, mortals understood death as universal. After Enoch, they recognize exceptions exist. The divine can preserve from death those he selects to preserve. This creates an opening for later prophecies concerning resurrection and eternal life. Enoch's household returns from the elevated place transformed. They have witnessed something that will mark them for the remainder of their lives. Whenever doubt threatens, they recall the radiance. Whenever evil appears victorious, they recall the messengers. Whenever death appears final, they recall their father who did not die. Methuselah lives another 687 years following his father's translation. Every single one of those years, he carries the memory. Every generation he fathers, he shares with them the account. Grandfather Enoch walked alongside the Almighty. Then the Almighty carried him home. The difference between translation and ascension becomes clear. 2 men in history escaped death. 2 others experienced something categorically different. Enoch and Elijah were translated. They moved from earth to the celestial realm without dying. Their bodies were preserved, transformed, carried into the presence of the Almighty while life still animated them. The Messiah ascended. He died first. Truly died. Not metaphorically, not temporarily, but actually ceased living. Then he rose from death with a glorified body. Then he ascended to the position at the Father's right hand. The distinction carries more importance than might initially appear. Translation represents the divine's power to preserve from death. The one translated never experiences the separation of soul from body. Death possesses no claim. The person transitions from mortal to immortal existence in a continuous moment. Ascension represents the divine's power to conquer death after experiencing it completely. The one who ascends tastes death fully, descends to the domain of the dead, then breaks death's hold from within. He rises not merely to renewed life, but to life that cannot be destroyed. Enoch walked alongside the divine so faithfully that the divine removed him from the earth before the flood. His translation served as reward for righteousness. The divine spared him from witnessing the destruction that was approaching. The Messiah walked perfectly alongside the divine, yet was not spared suffering. He entered death deliberately, though he could have avoided it. His death and resurrection served not as reward, but as sacrifice. He went through death to create a path for others to follow. The difference becomes evident when considering what each accomplishes. Enoch's translation saves Enoch. The Messiah's death, resurrection, and ascension save multitudes. Enoch bypasses death for himself. The Messiah defeats death for everyone who places trust in him. Translation is exceptional. Ascension is unrepeatable. Only 2 people in all of history have been translated. This rarity demonstrates that translation is not the divine's normal plan for mortals. Death remains the common path. Translation serves as sign and wonder, not standard procedure. Only one person has ascended after defeating death. This singularity demonstrates that what the Messiah accomplished was unique. No one else possessed the ability to do it. No one else needed to do it after he did it once. Yet translation and ascension connect in an important way. Both point toward the final resurrection that awaits all believers. When the Messiah returns, those who are alive will be transformed in an instant, translated like Enoch. Those who have died will be raised, resurrected like the Messiah himself. Enoch's translation provides a preview of what happens to the living at the last day. They will not die first. They will be caught up, transformed, made suitable for the celestial realm in a moment. The same power that carried Enoch will carry them. The Messiah's ascension provides the pattern for what happens to the dead at the last day. They will be raised with glorified bodies, incorruptible and immortal. The same power that raised the Messiah will raise them. Paul the Apostle later writes about this distinction. He explains that the dead in Messiah will rise first. Then those who are alive will be caught up together with them. 2 groups, one experiencing resurrection, one experiencing translation, yet both groups arriving at the same destination through the same transforming power. Enoch stands as the first example of translation. He proves the concept functions. A mortal can be carried bodily into the celestial realm without dying. The physical body can be transformed to exist in the presence of the divine. The Messiah stands as the first example of resurrection to eternal life. He proves death can be conquered. A mortal can die truly, then rise to life that cannot be ended. The grave cannot hold the one who holds the keys to the grave. These 2 types of victory over death, translation and resurrection, will merge at the last day. Some will experience what Enoch experienced, others will experience what the Messiah experienced. All will end up in the same place, the presence of the divine in bodies that no longer decay, in a world where death has been abolished. The timing carries significance as well. Enoch was translated before the flood, before the great judgment on the corrupt world. His removal signaled that judgment was approaching soon. When the faithful disappeared, destruction followed. The Messiah's ascension happened after his resurrection, after he defeated death. His ascension signaled that the work of redemption was complete. When the victorious one returns to the Father, the door stands open for others to follow. Translation requires no sacrifice. Enoch did nothing to earn his translation except walk faithfully alongside the divine. Divine grace chose to spare him from death. Ascension required the ultimate sacrifice. The Messiah poured out his life willingly. His ascension was the culmination of his finished work, not merely a reward for righteousness. Some theological traditions wonder if Enoch and Elijah will return before the end, two witnesses who never died, sent back to testify before the final judgment. Whether this proves accurate or not, their translations remain historical realities that demonstrate the divine's power over death. The Messiah will certainly return. His ascension was observed by witnesses who heard messengers say, "This same one who was taken up into the celestial realm will come back in the same way you saw him go." His return is as certain as his departure. Enoch's translation encourages the faithful that death is not inevitable for everyone. The divine can intervene. He can spare those he chooses to spare. The Messiah's resurrection and ascension encourage the faithful that death is not final for anyone. The divine can resurrect. He can raise those who have died and give them bodies that never die again. Together, translation and ascension reveal the full scope of the divine's victory over death. The living can be transformed without dying. The dead can be raised to indestructible life. Either way, death loses. Either way, the people belonging to the divine win. Enoch walked alongside the Almighty and existed no more. The Messiah died, rose, and ascended. Both point to the day when all of the divine's children will be with him, forever, death having been swallowed up in victory. Enoch in the New Testament appears with persistence. The ancient patriarch refuses to stay buried in antiquity. Luke traces the genealogy of the Messiah backward through the generations, passing through kings and prophets and patriarchs, reaching back to Adam himself. Enoch appears in the chain, not a footnote, not a side reference, an essential link connecting the Messiah to the first mortal. The inclusion carries weight. By placing Enoch in the Messiah's lineage, Luke connects the one who prophesied about the second coming to the one who will accomplish it. Enoch saw it in vision. His descendant will fulfill it in reality. The writer of Hebrews devotes a chapter to faith heroes. Abraham is there. Moses is there. The prophets are there, and Enoch appears among them with a clear commendation. By faith, Enoch was taken up so that he should not see death, and he was not found because the divine took him. Before he was taken up, he was attested as having pleased the Almighty. The text emphasizes faith as the means of Enoch's translation. He was not carried because of perfect performance. He was carried because he believed the divine. His faith pleased the Father. His trust opened the door for his translation. Hebrews also draws a crucial connection. Without faith, it is impossible to please the Almighty. Anyone who comes to the divine must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. This principle, taught in the context of discussing Enoch, reveals the foundation of his walk alongside the divine. Enoch believed the divine existed, not just as abstract concept, but as person to be known. Enoch believed the divine rewards those who seek him, not just with external blessings, but with his own presence. These two beliefs shaped 300 years of faithful walking. Then Jude brings Enoch into the conversation about false teachers. He writes, "Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied about these men. Behold, the Lord comes with tens of thousands of his holy ones to execute judgment on all, to convict all the ungodly of all their ungodly deeds which they have committed in an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things ungodly sinners have spoken against him." This quotation comes from the book of Enoch, which Jude treats as containing authentic prophecy. Whether he considers the entire book inspired scripture or simply preserves a genuine prophecy attributed to Enoch, the effect is the same. The New Testament validates Enoch's prophetic gift. The prophecy itself speaks of the second coming, the Lord returning with myriads of messengers, judgment executed on the ungodly, conviction for ungodly deeds, and ungodly speech. The first recorded prophecy of the Messiah's return appears in Enoch's testimony. This means Enoch saw not just his own generation's judgment in the flood, but the final judgment at the end of history. He witnessed both bookends of the divine plan, the cleansing of the antediluvian world, and the renovation of all creation at the Messiah's return. The New Testament writers do not treat Enoch as myth. They do not reference him as symbol. They cite him as historical figure whose life and prophecies carry authority for their own generation. Peter, in his second letter, draws parallels between the ancient world that perished in the flood and the present world that awaits judgment by fire. Though he does not mention Enoch by name, the connection is clear. Enoch prophesied about both judgments, the one that came and the one still coming. The comparison works because Enoch lived in days like it was in the time of Noah. Violence filled the earth. Corruption spread, unchecked. The Watchers had descended and mixed with humans, creating hybrid beings and forbidden knowledge. Into that darkness, Enoch spoke truth and walked faithfully. The parallel to the present age is deliberate. When the Messiah returns, conditions will resemble Enoch's time. People will eat and drink, marry and give in marriage, business as usual. Then suddenly, judgment arrives. Enoch's prophecy, preserved through millennia, still warns modern generations. The Lord comes, ungodliness will be punished. No one escapes the reckoning. The New Testament also picks up Enoch's vision of the Son of Man existing before creation. John's Gospel opens with this reality. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with the Divine, and the Word was the Divine. The pre-existent Messiah that Enoch saw in the parables becomes flesh and dwells among mortals. When John describes his vision in Revelation, seeing the Son of Man walking among lampstands, eyes like fire, voice like rushing water, he sees the same figure Enoch saw. The throne room scenes in Revelation echo the throne room Enoch entered. The final judgment described at the end of Revelation fulfills the judgment Enoch prophesied at the beginning. The theological threads weave together across centuries. What Enoch saw in vision, the apostles witnessed in history and prophecy. What Enoch experienced in translation, believers will experience at the resurrection. The New Testament writers do not feel compelled to explain Enoch's translation in natural terms. They do not rationalize it away. They accept the text at face value. The divine took him. He did not see death. He pleased the divine through faith. This acceptance carries weight because it establishes a precedent. If the divine can translate Enoch bodily to the celestial realm, then bodily resurrection is no problem. If physical bodies can be transformed to exist in the divine presence, then the promise of resurrection bodies for believers becomes plausible. Enoch's inclusion in Hebrews' Hall of Faith also places him among those who died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them from afar. Even though Enoch did not die, he still awaited ultimate fulfillment. His translation was preview, not completion. The promises the divine made, the Messiah who would crush the serpent's head, the kingdom that would have no end, the restoration of all things, these were not fulfilled in Enoch's lifetime. He saw them in vision and believed they would come. His faith stretched across centuries to grab hold of realities not yet manifest. This makes Enoch's faith relevant for every generation. Believers still wait for promises not yet completely fulfilled. They still walk by faith, not by sight. They still trust that the divine rewards those who diligently seek him, even when rewards remain future. The New Testament treatment of Enoch establishes him as more than interesting historical figure. He becomes pattern, precedent, prophet. His walk alongside the divine models the life of faith. His translation previews the resurrection. His prophecies frame the second coming. When Paul writes to the Thessalonians about the return of the Messiah and the catching up of believers, he describes something Enoch would recognize: the dead rising first, then the living being transformed and caught up. Enoch experienced the second part of that equation. When Peter writes about scoffers who say all things continue as they were from the beginning of creation, He could be describing Enoch's generation. People doubted judgment was coming. Enoch warned them. Judgment came anyway. The pattern repeats. Skeptics doubt the second coming. The faithful prophesy, it is certain. One day, like in the days of Noah, like in the days of Enoch, judgment will arrive suddenly for a world unprepared. Enoch stands in the New Testament as witness that the divine keeps his word. He translated Enoch as promised. He judged the antediluvian world as prophesied. He will return with tens of thousands of his holy ones as predicted. The book that would not die exists with remarkable persistence. For over 1,000 years, the book of Enoch vanished from Western knowledge. Church fathers in the early centuries knew it, quoted it, referenced it. Tertullian considered it scripture. Clement of Alexandria cited it as authoritative. The early church was familiar with Enoch's visions and treated them seriously. Then it disappeared. As the church consolidated its biblical canon, books like Enoch fell into the category of useful but not canonical. Useful meant believers could read them for edification. Not canonical meant they did not carry the same authority as recognized scripture. Over time, useful became forgotten. The text that had shaped early Jewish and Christian theology slipped from view in Europe and the Mediterranean world. Scholars knew it had existed. They could read quotes from it in other ancient texts, but no one could find a complete copy. The book survived in one place, Ethiopia. The Ethiopian Church, separated from the Western Church by geography and theology, maintained different traditions. They considered First Enoch fully canonical. They copied it carefully through the centuries. They preserved it in Ge'ez, the ancient Ethiopian language. While European scholars lamented the lost book, Ethiopian monks protected it in their libraries. What the West forgot, Africa remembered. The story of rediscovery begins with a Scottish explorer named James Bruce in 1773. He traveled to Ethiopia on what was ostensibly a quest to find the source of the Nile. But Bruce had broader interests. He loved ancient manuscripts. He heard rumors that Ethiopian monasteries possessed books unknown in Europe. He found more than rumors. He found 3 complete copies of First Enoch. Bruce returned to Europe carrying these manuscripts. The scholarly world erupted. A text they had known only through fragments and quotations now lay before them in complete form. They could read Enoch's visions in their entirety for the first time in over a millennium. The initial translations appeared in the early 1800s. Scholars pored over the Ge'ez text, comparing it to the fragments preserved in other languages. Questions multiplied. How reliable was the Ethiopian version? Did it match the original Hebrew or Aramaic text that had been lost? The answers came from an unexpected location: the Judean desert, the caves at Qumran. In the late 1940s and early 1950s, Bedouin shepherds and archaeologists discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls. Among the hundreds of ancient manuscripts found in those caves were fragments of First Enoch, not in Ethiopian, not in Greek, in Aramaic. The language Jesus spoke, the language of Judea in the Second Temple period. Multiple copies of Enoch existed at Qumran, dozens of fragments representing different portions of the book. The community living there valued Enoch highly. They studied his visions. They copied his prophecies. They treated his calendar system as important for understanding sacred time. The Aramaic fragments confirmed that the Ethiopian version, while not perfect, could preserve the essential content faithfully. The book that survived in Africa matched the book that had circulated in Judea 2,000 years earlier. This validation carries weight because it establishes the book of Enoch's antiquity. The visions were not medieval fabrications. They were not inventions of the Ethiopian Church. They were ancient Jewish literature that had been copied and preserved for over 2 millennia. The content of the book explains why some communities preserved it while others let it fade. The visions are intense. The descriptions of fallen messengers and their hybrid offspring disturbed some readers. The detailed accounts of celestial realms and future judgment seemed too specific for comfort. Mainstream Judaism, after the destruction of the Second Temple, focused on the Torah and Talmud. Apocalyptic literature like Enoch fell out of favor. The rabbis did not suppress it actively, but they did not promote it either. Mainstream Christianity, after establishing a closed canon of Scripture, treated Enoch similarly. Interesting, yes. Edifying, perhaps, but not necessary. Not authoritative in the same way as the books that made it into the Bible. The Ethiopian church took a different path. They maintained older traditions that the rest of Christianity had modified or abandoned. Their biblical canon remained larger. Their liturgical practices retained elements from earlier centuries. Preserving First Enoch fit this pattern of conserving rather than innovating. The rediscovery sparked new theological conversations. Scholars began reconsidering how much the Book of Enoch influenced New Testament writers. The parallels between Enoch's visions and the teachings of Jesus became harder to ignore. The Son of Man passages in Enoch and the Gospels shared too much vocabulary and imagery to be coincidental. The book's influence on concepts like the resurrection, the final judgment, the role of messengers, and the nature of evil became clearer. Ideas that Christians assumed came purely from the canonical prophets actually had roots in or parallels with Enochic literature. This did not mean the Book of Enoch should be added to the biblical canon. It meant that the theological world of Second Temple Judaism was richer and more complex than previously understood. The New Testament writers drew from a wider pool of Jewish thought than just the Hebrew Bible. Modern scholars categorize First Enoch as pseudepigrapha, writings attributed to ancient figures but actually composed later. The visions were likely written down during the Second Temple period, though they may preserve much older oral traditions. Whether Enoch himself wrote them, or they were attributed to him by later visionaries, the book claims to transmit Enoch's revelations. And communities across centuries believed those claims enough to preserve the text carefully. The survival of the Book of Enoch through 2,000 years of suppression, neglect, and geographical isolation demonstrates something significant. Some texts refuse to die. Some knowledge insists on being transmitted. The book that vanished from the West survived in Africa. The book that seemed lost forever emerged from desert caves. The visions that mainstream institutions marginalized kept resurfacing in communities that valued them. Today, anyone with internet access can read First Enoch. Multiple translations exist. Scholarly commentaries analyze every chapter. The book that nearly disappeared has become widely accessible again. Its influence continues to grow as readers discover the depth of its visions and the power of its warnings. The prophecies Enoch spoke still speak. The judgments he announced still loom. The celestial realms he toured still exist beyond the veil. The book that would not die carries a message that will not die either. Walk alongside the divine. Judgment comes. The Messiah reigns. Choose righteousness before time runs out. Enoch at Qumran reveals its own narrative. The caves tell their own story. 11 caves carved into limestone cliffs overlooking the Dead Sea. Inside them, hidden for 2,000 years, one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in history. Hundreds of ancient manuscripts, including fragments of nearly every book in the Hebrew Bible, and 11 copies of First Enoch. The community at Qumran, likely the Essenes, though debate continues, did not treat Enoch as peripheral. They gave him prominence. More copies of Enoch were found than of most biblical books except Psalms, Deuteronomy, and Isaiah. The fragments date to the 2nd and 1st centuries before the Common Era. These are old manuscripts, some of the oldest Hebrew and Aramaic texts ever discovered, and among them Enoch's visions occupy a place of honor. Cave 4 yielded the most Enochic material. Multiple manuscripts representing different sections of the book. the astronomical sections, the Book of Watchers, the Dream Visions, the Epistle of Enoch, all present in Aramaic, the language of Judea in that period. The Qumran community structured their year around a solar calendar, exactly 364 days, 52 weeks, perfectly divided. This calendar appears in the astronomical sections of 1st Enoch. The correlation is too precise to be accidental. The community at Qumran followed Enoch's revealed calendar system. This set them apart from mainstream Judaism, which followed a lunar calendar. The difference was not merely technical. It determined when they celebrated feasts, when they observed Sabbaths, how they understood the divine's appointed times. Calendar systems encode theology. By following Enoch's calendar, the Qumran community declared their allegiance to a particular vision of divine order. They believed the true year had 364 days, because Enoch saw the movements of celestial bodies and recorded their divinely ordained patterns. The manuscripts also reveal how the community interpreted Enoch's prophecies. They saw themselves living in the final days before judgment. The corruption Enoch warned about filled their own generation. The time of testing was upon them. They withdrew to the wilderness, literally. They established their community in one of the most desolate regions of the land, arid, harsh, isolated. There they could maintain purity and prepare for the coming judgment without the corruption of the cities polluting them. Enoch's model of righteousness in a corrupt age shaped their self-understanding. They were not merely preserving texts. They were living out the pattern Enoch established, separating from evil, walking alongside the divine, maintaining holiness while the world decayed. The war scroll found at Qumran describes an apocalyptic battle between the sons of light and the sons of darkness. The language echoes Enochic themes, messengers fighting alongside the righteous, divine judgment executed on the wicked, a new age dawning after the destruction of the old. The community rule outlines how members should live: ritual purity, shared possessions, strict discipline, study of sacred texts. Again, the influence of Enochic thought appears. The community saw themselves as walking alongside the divine, the way Enoch walked, in complete separation from the ungodly. Not all scholars agree on every detail of who lived at Qumran or why, but the prominence of Enochic literature in their library is undisputed. Whatever else the community was, they valued Enoch's visions highly enough to copy them repeatedly and preserve them carefully. The discovery of Aramaic Enoch fragments solved a scholarly puzzle. For centuries, researchers debated whether the Book of Enoch was originally Jewish or Christian, early or late. The Qumran manuscript settled the question. The book was Jewish. It was early. It predated Christianity and was valued in certain Jewish communities before the time of Jesus. This does not mean every Jewish person accepted Enoch as authoritative. The community at Qumran represented a sectarian movement. They disagreed with the Jerusalem temple authorities on many issues. Their library reflected their particular theological emphases. But the antiquity of the Enoch tradition is now established. These were not medieval forgeries. They were not Christian interpolations. They were pre-Christian Jewish texts that had been transmitted carefully for centuries. The manuscripts also preserved portions of the Book of Giants, a related text that expands on the story of the Nephilim. The Watcher's offspring grew to enormous size and consumed everything in sight. They taught mortals forbidden knowledge. They corrupted the earth until the divine sent the flood to cleanse it. This text, found alongside the Book of Enoch at Qumran, demonstrates how the community understood the antediluvian period. They believed the days before the flood were marked by angelic rebellion, genetic corruption, and violence that required divine intervention. They saw parallels to their own time. Foreign powers occupied the land. The temple priesthood had compromised. Society had grown corrupt. Just as in the days of Noah, just as in the days of Enoch, judgment was coming. The Qumran community eventually perished. Whether destroyed by Romans during the Jewish War, or simply abandoned as unsustainable, their settlement fell into ruins. But before they disappeared, they hid their manuscripts in caves. Those caves preserved the scrolls through 2,000 years of weather, earthquakes, and political upheaval. The dry desert air prevented decay. The remote location discouraged looters. The texts survived until a Bedouin shepherd stumbled upon them in 1947. The discovery revolutionized biblical studies. Suddenly, scholars had access to biblical manuscripts 1,000 years older than anything previously known. The Dead Sea Scrolls became the oldest biblical manuscripts in existence, and among those scrolls, Enoch's visions sat waiting to be read again. The community that valued them was gone, but the texts they preserved outlasted empires. The Qumran finds validate the Ethiopian Church's preservation of 1st Enoch. Two independent manuscript traditions, one in Africa, one in the Judean desert, both containing the same basic text. The probability of that happening by chance approaches zero. Enoch's visions were important enough that communities on opposite sides of the ancient world worked to preserve them. The text carried weight, the prophecies mattered. The astronomical knowledge shaped how people understood time and seasons. Today, visitors to the Israel Museum in Jerusalem can see fragments of the prophecies, Enoch manuscripts, small pieces of leather or papyrus covered with ancient Aramaic script, protected behind glass. Physical evidence of a community that lived and died believing Enoch's visions were worth protecting. Why Enoch matters for restless hearts becomes abundantly clear. The world tilts toward chaos again. Violence rises. Truth crumbles. The powerful oppress without consequence. Technology advances faster than wisdom. Corruption spreads through institutions meant to protect justice. The pattern repeats. As it was in the days of Noah, so it becomes again. Into this familiar darkness, Enoch speaks. Not because his book belongs in every biblical canon, not because his calendar system should govern modern timekeeping, not because his specific visions of celestial geography must be accepted as literal descriptions. Enoch speaks because he demonstrated something desperately needed. Intimacy with the divine is possible in any age, under any conditions, despite any surrounding corruption. The man lived in the most violent period of human history. The Watchers had descended. Nephilim roamed the earth. Forbidden knowledge corrupted human society. Wickedness filled every corner of the known world. Death and injustice dominated daily life. Enoch did not wait for conditions to improve before walking alongside the divine. He did not postpone holiness until society cleaned up. He did not make excuses about how the culture made righteousness impossible. He walked alongside the divine while the world burned. 300 years. Not 3 weeks of inspired devotion. Not 3 months of intensive spiritual practice. 3 centuries of consistent daily communion with the Creator while living in the worst civilization humanity has ever produced. This shatters every excuse. The person who says, "I cannot maintain faith in this political climate," stands refuted by Enoch. The person who claims society is too corrupt for righteousness stands corrected. The person who insists, "You do not understand how dark my situation is," stands challenged. Enoch understood. He lived in darker circumstances. He walked alongside the divine anyway. His walk was not escapist. He did not retreat to a hermitage. He raised children. He worked. He engaged with his community. He prophesied to his generation. He fulfilled ordinary responsibilities while maintaining extraordinary fellowship with the divine. The integration carries weight. Walking alongside the divine did not remove him from normal life. It transformed how he lived normal life. His work became worship. His relationships became opportunities for blessing. His daily routine became sacred practice. This offers hope to the exhausted believer trying to balance faith and family and work and service. Enoch proves it can be done. Communion with the divine does not require abandoning responsibilities. It requires bringing the divine into those responsibilities. His translation also speaks to restless hearts. Death is not inevitable for everyone. The divine can intervene. He can preserve. He can transform. The pattern established through Enoch continues. The divine still removes his faithful ones before judgment falls. The timing of his translation reinforces the message. Removed before the flood, carried before the judgment, spared from witnessing the destruction. Divine mercy includes protection, not just redemption. For those living in the approach of similar judgment, Enoch's translation becomes promise. The faithful will not be abandoned when fire falls. The righteous will not be left to endure the full measure of divine wrath against wickedness. Translation, or its equivalent in future ages, awaits those who walk alongside the divine. Enoch's prophecies matter too. He spoke of the second coming before the first coming occurred. He announced judgment when judgment seemed distant. He maintained hope when circumstances suggested hopelessness. The restless heart wants to know, does my faithfulness matter? Does anyone see? Will justice ever come? Enoch's prophecy answers, yes. The Lord comes with tens of thousands of his holy ones. Judgment is certain. The wicked will be convicted. The righteous will be vindicated. The visions Enoch received also address modern spiritual hunger. People long to know that the unseen world is real, that the celestial realm exists, that messengers operate, that the spiritual realm is more substantial than the material world. Enoch went there, saw it, described it, returned with testimony that the invisible world is more solid than the visible one. The throne stands. The messengers worship. The chambers of the dead wait. The Son of Man reigns. These are not metaphors. They are realities. This knowledge stabilizes the shaking believer. When material circumstances collapse, spiritual realities remain. When earthly kingdoms fall, the celestial kingdom stands. When physical life ends, the soul continues in places Enoch visited and described. His moral teachings address contemporary confusion. What is right? What is wrong? How should we live? The culture offers contradictory answers. Enoch speaks clearly. Righteousness brings life. Wickedness brings death. Justice matters. Sexual purity matters. Honest speech matters. Generosity matters. These are not arbitrary rules. They are descriptions of how reality works. Walk in the divine's ways and you align with the grain of the universe. Walk against them and you splinter yourself on the truth. Enoch learned this through 3 centuries of experience. His teachings are not theoretical. They are proven. The restless heart seeking guidance finds in Enoch's instructions practical wisdom for navigation through moral chaos. When every voice screams different directions, Enoch points one way: walk alongside the divine. His example also confronts the modern addiction to novelty. Enoch walked the same path for 300 years. No shortcuts, no hacks, no revolutionary new techniques for instant intimacy with the divine, just daily, plodding faithfulness over centuries. This offends the culture of quick fixes, but it speaks truth to those exhausted by chasing the latest spiritual trend. The ancient path still works. The simple practice of walking alongside the divine still produces transformation. Enoch's life refutes the lie that holiness is boring. He experienced extraordinary revelations. He toured the celestial realm. He spoke with messengers. He saw the throne room. He received prophecies that shaped millennia, all while maintaining an ordinary life of work and family. The restless heart-craving adventure finds it in walking alongside the divine. Not adventure as the world defines it, constant novelty and adrenaline, but adventure as deep encounter with the infinite. Each day with the divine brings discovery. 3 centuries were not enough for Enoch to exhaust the riches of divine fellowship. Finally, Enoch matters because he shows that one person's faithfulness reverberates through history. His walk alongside the divine influenced his children. They influenced their children. The knowledge he received was preserved and transmitted. Thousands of years later, people still read his prophecies and take courage. The restless heart wondering, "Does my life matter?" finds the answer in Enoch's legacy. Walk alongside the divine faithfully, and the impact extends far beyond your lifetime. Generations you will never meet will be strengthened by your example. Enoch walked alongside the divine in a corrupt world and existed no more, for the divine claimed him. This sentence contains everything the restless heart needs to know. Walking alongside the divine is possible now. Corruption around you does not prevent it. Intimacy awaits those who pursue it. And the end of that walk? Translation, transformation, being carried into the presence of the one you have walked beside for years. This is not myth. This is not symbol. This is history, promise, and invitation. Walk alongside the divine. The unseen world is real. The Messiah reigns. Judgment comes. Choose righteousness. Choose fellowship. Choose the path Enoch walked. And when your days are complete, however the divine chooses to end them, you will step from walking beside him on earth to walking beside him in the celestial realm. Enoch proves it is possible. His life is the testimony. His translation is the promise. His prophecies are the warning and the hope. For the restless heart seeking solid ground in shifting times, Enoch stands as bedrock. Walk alongside the divine. Everything else follows.